be shared. So this kind of gives you some information about that. Also, yesterday in the morning, there was a lot of discussion about the copyright information about Common Core. Here's our license grant. Here's a website link to get that information. So that's there as well. Also, I have a copy. I'm not sure if you all need a copy of names and demographic information members of each of the other work groups as well.
On the license agreement, does it state that once you have a license grant, you can go in and change the objectives?
I have just handed that, so I'm not.
I'm not comfortable with proceeding with that. That's not what the statute and the commission is to go in and just change the existing standards and resubmit.
It actually says modify and revise.
Yeah.
This is the
I thought, no, it says modify and revise.
It says develop as
And
well.
every
That's all of
state-
it.
Every state would have done that. And then just named it something else and sent it back. Now they're in worse shape and more comfortable about it because they did that.
So on the bottom line, page 1, whenever a state board of education develops, evaluates. So evaluate to be assessed, modify or revise academic performance standards or learning standards. So it has all of those. It's including everything. So we can add to the standards, we can change the standards, we can, but we are, I think it would be best for educators who are working off of this document to know what we're changing. It would help that transition.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I've been in education since 1982 and been through a lot of different situations as far as standards go, or no standards go. And I think that we all need to be concerned about the control that the federal government is taking over our education. I'm just wondering if you all have any of those concerns at all, or do you not care that they're going to have the control? I mean, that's our
I don't feel like we do have control. We have the right to take these standards, and it says on what Marilyn just read, to modify and revise. To me, that's not federal control at all. That's we can decide what's best for our children.
They only control honesty as they control the money.
And the testing, it's big control the testing part too. There may be some different viewpoints once all the state gives the test. We'll be curious to see what happens after that. And I hope that all works out because I think those of us who are standing up for local control are in the minority. But I understand certainly where you all are coming from, but I just can't give up the fight for local control. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. It's not to fight you or to do anything like that. I totally respect you all. I just think we all need to really, really consider what we're doing, the opportunity we have right now. We have 1490. Our state has the opportunity to say, hey, we can write our own standards. You guys are wonderful. We have so much knowledge. You can sit here today and write the standards any way you want. I mean, if you think of the opportunities you have right now, it's pretty awesome. So I think we need to think about that. I think that we could work together with our state board or with DESE and all come together as a group and say, hey, this is great, let's do it. And learn from what we can give them here from the board, figure out what the strengths of it, and write our own curriculum. We can do that.
This curriculum was part of the state standards initiative that the governor signed us on to. And this curriculum was developed by 2 private trade organizations.
It's not.
The HB and the National Government Association are privately owned entities. Up to that time, Missouri had developed its own standards. This is the first time corporate America has gotten involved in education. And so it wouldn't look like national standards. They divided it into 2 consortiums, PART and SBAC. But if you look at all of those 2 tests, they are one. Everybody's standards are the same. part and the SBAC are the same. This is national standards, this takes away a little control.
And one more thing, I was on the school board and approved,
I was where you were at last year, I did not know any of this, none of it. I have come up, I have, okay.
You're making assumptions.
Yes, you are.
You're making.
So you're okay with national standards, that's what I'm hearing.
I am okay with the National Council of Teachers and Mathematics recommendations for standards. Yes, I am okay with those standards, but we make a choice of what we put as priority for our local districts. We look at the standards and we go by our data from our students and decide which standards will be our priorities for our students that year.
No, I think that somebody from Desi's been talking to
And-
people here.
here's the thing,
And it's unfortunate you feel that way and you think that way, because there's a lot of other educators out there who understand just as much as you understand.
I think there's a lot of educators out there afraid to speak up.
I think what we need to think about here is, what Jerry and I were saying, the standards aren't that bad. It's not about the standards. When I was on the school board in 2010, and we voted for Common Core, I had just completed my teaching, I just retired. I don't know why you guys were even worried about it. The standards look great. I looked at them in 2010, I saw them. Okay, so it's been 4 years ago, and I even didn't looked at them before that. So I've been aware of them for a long time and thought about it, and was not having a problem with the standards whatsoever, approved it. But once I found out the full ramifications of what Common Core is bringing to us,
What is
What
it?
is
I'm
that?
wondering.
Right.
We're able to change what we have in front of us and craft stuff for what we want for our students. So what are the ramifications?
We don't want to keep any, we want to kick it all out. And this is
we.
parents,
so people know
teachers, many of the states in the United States, we've
Who's
got
doing
governors
that?
now.
Yeah, but I don't understand. Just speaking the information.
The core assurances that are attached to it.
See, that's all of it. It's all on the computer, it's all in
I mean, it's documented.
No.
What about the people who are supposed to, the group of 30 some odd that were supposed to approve and sign off the standards? There's a lady named Sandra Stotsky. Are you all familiar with her? They went after the Common Core. Why not?
Dr. Milgram? Go ahead.
No, I just wonder what's,
Don't I don't respect.
As a quick disclaimer, I did study under Sandra Stotsky. She was one of my professors in Arkansas. I'd be interested to know why you don't want Dr. Just for knowledge, I mean, is there something that,
I don't believe that he is very knowledgeable about how children learn mathematics.
yeah,
Don't have
he's a
professional
mathematician. He's
Yes,
not-
I don't have professional respect for him.
There are big differences between mathematicians and math educators.
Definitely.
And so, being a mathematician doesn't mean that you understand, and like Ann said, how children learn math. And there's a lot of research in that area right now because we're all learning about that. So, my son is a mathematician. He wouldn't have a clue how to teach math.
But they also understand the importance of certain aspects when teaching high school students and where they need to go if they're going to pursue that career. So I think he does have knowledge about
and I think there's a difference between being able to teach math and knowing what they need to know. There's a definite difference there. And I'll use a reference as an athletic coach. Some people are good at athletics, but not good coaches. Some coaches are not good at athletics. They weren't good football players, but they're very good football coaches. They know what the kids need to do, okay? Does that make sense? Okay.
I think their input is important, whether you like what they think about teaching or not. I do think we need to listen to their opinions. Sandra Stotsky was asked by the Common Core to come to Colorado with a group of, I think it was 33 other people, to sign off on the objectives. And when she went to this meeting, she was at the University of Arkansas, then she went to Massachusetts, the head of the state school board for there for years. She has great credentials and.
She wrote Massachusetts standards.
Yes, she did,
Yeah.
and then I'm one.
And he
Actually, Massachusetts, has adopted common core.
Yeah.
And
They
even
are doing very well with
Same as
the
her.
international
And
basis.
Even the report that you all were citing ranks Massachusetts below the Common Core. So yes, it does. The Fordham report, it does.
Yes.
I think we got an A now.
It was, that was the
Go
report you all were
ahead, you're right.
so
That was the
high on
report you wanted
yesterday.
us to look at.
It's,
I'm not high on the Fordham, but I do think that the way that they do their research is accountable.
Our conversation yesterday.
Yeah, I think, but we have to recognize that 45 plus states are, give or take now, have adopted common core. And I don't think we can just assume it's because of the quality of the standards.
It was money.
We have to, maybe that's part of it. But I think we do have to be aware that there really was a lot of federal involvement through the stimulus program. I mean, some states started moving to adopt it very early in the Race to the Top application. Others moved to adopt it through a waiver for No Child Left Behind. So it's very clear that there were incentives to adopt it. And even now, as we consider possibly moving away, there are concerns about whether we lose our waiver. So we can't separate the fact that these standards were tied to federal incentives.
What waiver are you
The
talking about?
waiver,
The ESEA would, No Child Left Behind waiver.
I think they're
Oh,
not only confused, because I don't like the way the process occurred either. How we got the standards, that didn't make the standards bad. How we got them shoved down our throat, or how we got them is an issue, that's a different issue than the standards themselves. If the standards are good, they're good. I don't like the process, how we got it, because, but I didn't make the standards bad.
But at the same time, I don't think that just because other states adopted them, we can also assume that they're good.
And the thing is if you don't, if you, if
That's why
you
we're here.
don't like.
Right, exactly.
That's
If
why
you
we're here.
don't, if you don't like the process and could I say the ties to it, why don't we just go ahead and take this opportunity to do what you're saying?
That's what I hope we're doing today, or this time. But I don't see any need to start from a clean piece of paper. I think, we're not gonna do that in a year. That ain't gonna happen in a year, and if they're not that bad, I like tweaking them, because I think they do need tweaked and revised, whatever the case may be.
Jerry,
I
you
want to
just
start from a clean sheet of paper.
using that theory, isn't that exactly what they did with the Common Core standards? They started from a clean sheet of paper and they said, guess what? This is what you got.
not
No.
necessarily, because if you look
I
at
don't-
what
I
the
don't know
Common
that.
Core gave you, and you look at back at what we have, some of that stuff is very similar. It's just they tweak that vocabulary to make it sound different.
And it's not that much better, it's not
Yeah.
that much better than what we had. That's why I'm saying, why don't we take this opportunity to make it what you want it to be? Think of all the years you've taught and you've complained about these silly standards that we've got. Why don't we do what we can to fix it?
It's like what we're saying about the
You
standards.
don't? Oh my goodness.
We were wanting standards, we were wanting consistent things, you needed to
Teachers are right about the standards and the pressure they have and the.
Because change is hard.
To teach.
When they had their curriculum in line based on the GLEs, and then we're adding some more standards, so they had to change, their curriculum had to change, it was a lot of work. But the majority of the teachers that I know, that I've been experienced, this is what they were wanting. It makes sense to them, they're rigorous, they're more explicit. Yes, we talked
Why
about
do
that
they have to be
yesterday.
told what to teach? These are individuals that have 4 years plus in college education, because every job has a job. Doesn't matter what you got as a career. But why did it come about all of a sudden in the last 20, 25 years, the teachers said, please tell me what to teach, what changed? High stakes testing.
Or not having anything.
High stakes testing, that's what changed it. And teachers were under the gun. Their administrators are coming down and saying, our school's not performing. And then you're going, okay then, what are you gonna give me so that my kids can do well in this? Because I don't know what they're testing for. Okay, we'll give you some standards. Okay, now I know what to teach. Okay, we're still not doing well enough. Please make these standards more specific. We're teaching to the test. We're still gonna be teaching to the test. World War I And that generation that lived through the depression, did those teachers have standards? No. Did they know they were gonna have to send people out to fly planes, create airplanes, put a man on the moon? No, but we did it. So all this bull about, we've gotta prepare kids for jobs that aren't there. That generation did it. They did it without standards, and they were giving them a better education.
So did you guys like Race to the Top? Did you think it was a good program? Missouri, we made it, like you said, we developed the glees and we finally found a way to make it, every time we come together to work on our standards for our state, we do improve. We listen to our teachers, Missouri does, okay? And the reason I'm worried about Common Core, and we don't have to worry about it so much anymore, do we, because of this bill? But the reason I'm worried about it is because I'm feeling like we're gonna lose our voice. If we go with Common Core, we have to follow their guidelines. We do. And one of the things I was trying to tell you about was Sandra Stotsky. She was asked to serve on a committee to sign off on the objectives or the standards. When she went to Colorado and she didn't approve of them, they just quietly erased her name off of the list, off of the approval list. She went a week later to check and see how everybody else voted, and she couldn't find her name on it. Well, she was just taken off because she didn't agree with what they were saying. If you go to Sandra's website, you can read her hours of that.
So if I go away here, I feel like we started making some decent progress having the discussion yesterday. We're going back to where we started. And I think that's a step in the right direction. If I could point to the Fordham evaluation of Common Core, because I think it sums up exactly what we saw in here. The very first paragraph is on page 28 or something of the Common Core map. It says, final version of the Common Core State Standards for Math is exemplary in many ways. The expectations are generally well written and presented and cover much mathematical content with both depth and rigor. But though the content is generally sound, the standards are not particularly easy to read and require careful attention on the part of the reader. And especially that last part, as we went through in this group, on almost every standard, we found ways that we wanted to clarify, we wanted to fix it, make it better, because it didn't make sense. And we even debated what the meaning of some of the things were in here. And so from this document, I looked at Common Core, they gave 9 out of 10. They gave California a 10 out of 10, so I thought, well, I want to look at California. And I pulled up and I put that in the folder as well. And as I started looking through, I felt like California was very clear, well written, and we have another outside observer, or what we would call it, Fordham, who says California is very well, very good. So I'm with Jerry. I don't think we need to start from nowhere, but I think we should look at California and glance through those standards and see what they're doing. Maybe that's someplace we could work from. Maybe we can do something to bring in what we're talking about here.
What year was California?
I do like how they're like,
I agree that we probably shouldn't start from scratch.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
But what is important, and we touched on this yesterday, is that our group must get with their group, and we must, as an entire K-12 group, agree on where we're gonna start from.
Yes.
Because if they start from here and we start from here, it's not gonna match up.
I
Where it
think
has to
that we
match
need
up.
to match up on the content. I don't know that we need to agree that we're gonna follow a particular state's document. We need to make sure that the transition content-wise is smooth.
And really, it's the transition from 5th grade to 6th grade that would be the greatest concern.
Something else we need to note is on the House Bill, on House Bill 1490, we have to follow what it says. We are here because of House Bill 1490, and it's a law, right? It's not an act, it's a statute. Okay. And when you look on page 7, it says the State Board of Education shall consider the work that has been done by other states, recognized regional and national experts, professional education discipline-based associations, and other professional education associations. So all I'm going to say is when we're sitting here writing the math standards for our state, we should not be basing what we're writing on this.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, okay?
I was of the same opinion yesterday, and I dug deep into this bill. And what we have to look at is, this bill separates the State Board of Education and this work group. There are specific things that each is tasked to do. The State Board of Education is tasked to either accept or not accept our recommendations. And in that, they have to consider all of that. If you go to the last page, the next to last page of the bill, or the last page, depending on how you print it or not, it specifically tells you what the work group is tasked to do, and that is all that we can look at. So in that, even though I don't like the Common Core state standards, we can look at them. And
But we
if
also
that,
have
if
to look
that's,
at other things, this is what we said.
Yeah, we're not saying no.
again,
We did not say don't look at other things.
Right. again, I do not, I'll go on record, I do not support the Common Core state standards. But I'm also saying that if that's what the group wants to look at, we're not prohibited by the bill from looking at it.
Could you tell us more about what you don't support? Is it the math, which is what I'm concerned with, or is it the process that got us here? I think we need to just get that out on the table. What is it that you don't like about it?
I don't like the whole initiative as a whole, and I don't like, based on what I've studied, based on what I've heard, and from the teachers, the parents in my district, there's much of it that is very much developmentally inappropriate at the level it's placed.
And what are some
So
examples of
that, that's something that we need to look at.
Yeah, we
I
need
don't-
specific examples.
And I don't have the specific examples right now, that's why I asked and suggested yesterday that we take these suggested revisions back to our respective people and say, this is what we're looking at. Some of these people were just notified Friday that they were gonna be here, or supposed to be here. They haven't had time to ask the people around them, what don't you like? What would make this better for you?
So you didn't submit your name for consideration?
I was asked to submit my name for consideration.
Did you?
I did.
And when was that?
That was about,
We're getting
a week and a half.
Yes.
It was about a week and a half ago that I was asked to submit my name, and I did. And I didn't find out that I was actually appointed to this position, probably sometime mid last week, okay? So, that's what I'm saying. We don't need to make any hard, fast decisions until we have all the input that we can get. If we're actually in this to do what's best for the kids.
But you realize that everyone's going to have time for public input. We can't wait and get everyone's opinion before we write it.
Actually, they're not gonna have time for public input because of the way the bill is written. They have to have 3 hearings, okay? They don't have to send it out for public input. The bill states they have to have 3 hearings. One within a month of when it's convened, one within 6 months of that, okay? So that it's not gonna be sent out by the bill for public input. That's our job. That's what we're tasked with, is to make sure that we're representing the public. Especially as far as the parents who are on this board, we are representing our public. We're representing our parents, and it is not possible for anyone to expect me to believe that I have 10,000 people in my city alone. It's not reasonable to expect me to be able to contact everyone who might have a concern in 3 or 4 days.
I'll tell you where you can go if you want to get information about those things that he's saying about parents who are concerned. It's an easy thing to access is the Coalition Against Common Core. If you just type that in, Google it, you'll have tons of concerns.
See, most of those concerns are embedded in misconceptions, such as yesterday when we were looking at the properties, saying that we're supposed to label those properties. The standard does not say that we're supposed to, it's that interpretation of the standard. And as we're researching, I would recommend going back to 1989, the first set of standards, which were presented by a national organization of the Teachers of Mathematics, who are research-based, and their recommendations. And what has happened, they were grade span, we went to grade level, we've just every year have reiterated. So I think as we're looking at K-5 standards, we need to know where they came from. And it's not, and see how closely they're tied to the research from mathematics
I don't have a
educators.
problem with that, as long as it's not developed by private trade organizations. I don't think that government should be embedded in business. Education.
These are
Business
very
hands-on
close to our
education.
fees.
So,
Very close.
It's,
What do
that's
you
the
think?
weird
I
part.
said these are very close to our current grade level expectations. You know, there's
I've
that
heard
crosswalk.
the same thing, I've heard that some of the stuff was moved up, some of the stuff was moved
So
down.
some of the stuff has been moved, but
So-
very generally, when you look at it, it did stay on the same playing field. Some of the stuff I do know that when, yeah, now I'm doing in third and it wasn't fourth, there was some movement in it, there was. Not that it can't be done, I don't think all the vocabulary that they're using in Common Core, I think that could have been revised, because I think that's a little too above. When we have to read it 3 times, we shouldn't have to make sure we're making sense of it, and I get that part of it. But at the same time, a lot of that, when you look back at the lease, could I use analyze instead of interpret? Could I use something, I mean, there's other words to use.
I think James hit on something yesterday regarding where we want to place these standards, the level of expectation. Because my wife, who teaches in Sykeston, teaches 4th grade, and she is a 20-year teacher. She's a great resource, especially to me and to this process. She is constantly telling me my kids can't do this. They're not ready for this. Now, it's not everything, but when it gets to there are districts in the state where the kids are capable of doing that. But I don't think that it serves the entire portion to say that this is where it has to be said, even though you can only get to here. We have to find some common ground so that the kids that aren't capable of doing that don't just get left further and further and further behind.
So in the standards we looked at yesterday, which ones of those did you feel were developmentally?
I honestly can't tell you, but like I said, I have not had time to go back to my people and ask, what do you feel is right? Which one is wrong? What do we need to move? That's why I said we don't need to make any hard, fast decisions until we can get that information. Otherwise, we're not serving the public.
I really prefer not to work with Common Core, and the other standards that you mentioned that were not developed by private trade organizations, I can more than willing to work with you on that and look at those.
But my point is that these were developed out of those standards. If you
As long
cross-reference
as
it,
they're not owned by the National Governors Association, Chief State School
our
Officers.
legislative standards aren't owned by we adopted these. These are our standards. We talked about that yesterday.
Can I suggest a good first activity, maybe to get us moving? There's obvious disagreement here about Common Core, whether or not we should even work from it. As I suggested, as I started reading through California's late last night, when you got an email from me, I didn't have the same problems that I had as I read through Common Core. We were changing wording over time. So if we could, what I would suggest is if we just take the next 10, 15 minutes to look through California standards, either individually or starting to do it as a group. And so we would be looking at other models as well and bring that into this discussion.
So what you're using?
I put it in the 2007 standards.
Could I say one more thing before we get into
Because what they're using is Common Core, so.
Right, they are currently using Common Core, that is correct.
But we're gonna look at the one that was ranked, given an A by Fordham Institute, is that correct?
That is correct.
Because one thing I wanted to say was, you were saying that the standards are very much like our old police.
Yes, they are.
If you look back at the grade that Fordham gave us, Missouri, on those, I think it was a D, it might have been an F. Did you look?
Those aren't standards, these are our standards. Those were grade level expectations, which are very different.
I think,
And that's what these are going to become, is our grade level expectations.
our
What we
standards are
want,
to-
our standards will be, until Congress changes them, the show me standards.
So,
that's
so,
the one.
okay, hang on just a second.
Fordham did
So-
make our
so
police.
With that statement,
Go back to them.
are we even supposed to be looking at these grade level expectations? Because our task is, the last page, it says, recommend performance standards. And that is the show me standards, correct?
Okay,
Yes.
and could I
But we
just
can't
finish what I
change
started
those.
saying?
Why can't we change those? We've been tasked to change those.
We cannot change
I don't
these.
think
This
so.
is
The only thing that's
legislative.
old is what we can change.
That's exactly
The
right.
other statutes there are no more. The light color is not.
I understand that. The last page says the task says with our job We are to develop and recommend performance standards.
And that's what these are the performance
No,
standards.
they're not according to the
Saying
place.
identify.
No, ma'am, not according to the placemat. The performance standards are stated specifically. They are the show me standards and they're the performance standards and the knowledge standards which make up that. So I have to ask the question, are we even allowed to touch the learning standards? Those are basically benchmarks as to whether or not the children are achieving these standards.
That's how we get to the performance tasks.
So, I want
So
to say something
if
that
we
goes
could
on
for a
with
moment,
these, and then
we could for a
finish my
moment.
statement.
Let's imagine that we walk here with absolutely no bias in Common Core. We have no prior knowledge. You have no prior knowledge about Common Core. You sat down yesterday and read through it as we did. We ourselves identified problems with the wording of the statements. In removing any prior knowledge, we ourselves read them and had concerns. So that's why I suggest let's look at other documents and see if we have the same type of reservations about other documents.
I agree that we can look at other sets of standards to get wording, that's a great idea. I don't understand not starting with what's in place in Missouri right now, which is the Missouri Learning Standards. Why not start there and then look for wording, which is what we started yesterday. I felt so good when I left here yesterday.
I agree with
It
that.
felt like we had finally found a consensus, finally we're making some progress. There weren't huge concerns about the content, there was concerns about the wording.
Well,
The
here's
wording
my-
we can get other places.
Here's my concern. You know, when the attorney came in yesterday and told us that not to worry about the copyright,
Or somebody called in or something.
do you remember yesterday there was an attorney who came
Perhaps
in
they must be.
I have concerns about what he said, and I also have concerns about this paper right here, this licensure. Because I really, really believe we need legal advice on this. If we're going to sit here and change this document that has been copyrighted, even though you all say we bought licensure, I don't think we can. And I'm very, very worried that.
So if we don't change that, it stays the same. Are you guys okay with that?
that's the biggest
And
fear I
then
have.
No.
We have an
right
opportunity
now.
here
That's
to
what
change
she's
the
saying.
standards.
That's what she's saying.
A new standard.
That's
If
what
we
I
do
asked
nothing,
right here.
everything stays in place.
Right.
Nothing
I'm
changes.
trying to go back to work.
We've messed up.
That's
We all lose.
We all lose if we don't take the chance to improve what we have, because if we don't come up with recommendations and revise them, it's fine.
But
It's
the
gonna
bill
stay
says
in place.
that we're supposed to do that considering the work that's been done by other states. We're not supposed to base it on this.
And we have to
We're just
learn.
base it on other.
My question is, are the learning standards mandated that they must be followed? Or is that left up to local control? How you
teach
how
is
you
local
teach.
control.
Our
So
pacing
the
guide,
learning-
that's
so
how
the
we
learning-
get our pacing guides.
Curriculum.
So are the learning goals curriculum? Or are the learning
No.
goals standards that are mandated by the state?
Nothing.
If the,
Yes,
No,
it
yes, they
is.
are.
If your district doesn't use them.
standards are mandated by the state.
Well, funding is tied to it, but we can still choose to do these.
Funding is tied, but standards are mandated by the state.
Actually, on page 4, it says local school districts and charter schools may adopt their own education standards in addition to those adopted by the state.
In addition,
In addition,
in addition,
Fine, put it on top then if you don't like
and
it.
who has time to teach that extra?
that's my question. Are
Most
the
teachers
learning,
think and everything.
because we come to a general consensus that these are learning goals. Even though they're called learning standards, they're called, they word as grade level expectations. Now then, Missouri, the Department of Education, for whatever reason, has decided to rename them the Missouri Learning Standards. Are they in fact standards that are mandated, that have to be followed? Or are they learning goals that each district can say, we don't want to use that, we want to use our own method of evaluating and assessing whether our kids know these here.
Yeah.
If the latter is the case, then whatever we make changes to doesn't matter, because they don't have to follow them anyway. They already have that ability
But
to
they
say,
don't have
no,
to
I don't
follow
want
them
to.
because the test is gonna be made,
The test is a completely different thing,
but it's gonna be.
and I agree.
They'll follow them because of that.
Yes, and I agree with that, but then, are we doing what we're supposed to do?
right now.
Is Lori still the chair today? Is it
Yeah.
carried over? Okay, Lori's still the chair. Lori, I move that we take 10 minutes to review California standards.
We have a second, we have a second.
I want to say something before we move on, because I'm trying to say this, and I was interrupted 4 times, and I didn't get to say what I wanted to say. Is there any way I can complete what I'm trying to
Let's
say?
finish this vote first. We're gonna move
Okay.
on that. We have a motion and a second to take 10 minutes to look over to California. Raise your right hand if you'd like to have that opportunity.
So if we're starting at 5th grade again.
Can I complete what I want trying to say?
I just want to say real quick, it's around page 52.
James, would you send me a direct link, because my Dropbox is not pulling it up?
Yeah, me too.
Well, I will just drop it in an email. Is that okay? Is that-
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Email me too, please. I need that too, mine isn't bringing it up either. Okay, can I say what I was trying to say just real quick?
Common Core, their review. And it's citations to California, and it's saying basically why they're so much superior, why we're lacking is because our standards are generally neither clear or specific.
But I think it's really
That's why
interesting that on the 2013 NAEP, 67% of their kids performed below basic or basic.
What are we talking about?
60, California.
Well, that's why I said
So,
earlier, there's
you
no
know-
relationship between state standards and student achievement. That's the Thomas Lovis.
It's like, you know, Missouri we had 61% of our kids below basic and basic on the NAEP. That's the national
What year was that?
2013.
2013.
That's not good. Massachusetts was only 49%. And they spend a lot more money in education than Missouri does. We spend around 9,000, they spend 16,000 per student. You know, it buys a lot of professional development time and textbooks and stuff.
Hatching it out. And I found also a Word document of California standards too, so just so we have that in the folder as well. But I think the PDF version has good illustrations. I was looking at the page number on the page.
James, did you send it?
I just emailed it to the group.
Yeah.
And just to point out something you could find out, but the ones that are like, have the green dot on them, it says these are the key standards for the grade. And as you look at the Fordham review, Fordham's criticism was that there seemed to be many standards, but they liked how they identified the key standards and assigned sort of relative weight to them.
We check current time as what districts do. We prioritize and give a weight to particular standards based on our student assessments.
So did you email that to all of us?
If you've been getting the emails from me,
I couldn't open it, the one you sent last night. All that I got was a list of who's in our group. Do you want to look on my computer and I can share with you?
We have James, also, we have a computer and screen.
Yes, I got you.
all right, I'll pull it up there.
Yeah, I couldn't open it, smart, I just typed it in. I just went to that folder and just typed it in. You know, that went to it,
I can turn it on.
everything we done.
We'll just try to forward it.
The only way I heard it saved it before it opens.
They just don't have these anymore, so
Year and a half in California.
they may have done the same thing.
Well, Fordham says that they're better than Common Core.
I'm just saying, they're not using them anymore. They may have.
Fordham said that they're,
It doesn't matter if they're not using it, Massachusetts and
Fordham that's huge, they are, I think they have an unbiased evaluation system as far as looking at standards and the processes they provide.
And actually, it said there was no real difference between one was an A and one was an A minus.
So yeah, well, I think that if you read the description though, I think it fits with our own assessment. And when it said, you know, it was the wording was not clear, I mean, that's what we came up with in this group yesterday. Many of us had different.
And we were fixing it.
Sure.
Progress on it.
it could have been a
But-
lot better.
And that's my concern is this licensure. I've got it.
Well, and even if
You're
you're
saying
saying
starting from scratch and using some of this, we can't just say very large numbers, very small numbers either, you still gotta be a little more specific.
We can't use their
Let's
stuff.
say copyright, we're gonna rewrite, and it's fine, we wanna pick up some of that vocabulary, you can still, they don't necessarily use that, but you can't, I'm just saying. So if you don't wanna use Common Core, the thing is, it does have some very good points in Common Core and how to set up your math. I don't think it's all bad, and my kids are learning, and I don't have a problem with it. My district is not making you read from a script, my district is not telling you how to do everything, so I think that is really district based. They are not doing it.
No,
And it's not,
restricted teaching is coming, look at New York, that's why the teachers are revolting in
So-
New York, because they have gone to restricted teaching.
They don't have to use it.
they don't have to use it.
No.
Yes, that is a
No, they
district-based
aren't.
decision, that is a district-based
Only if they're a
decision.
failing school.
Exactly, and we are not a failing district, so we are not doing it.
The expected outcome for Common Core is for the first 1 year.
Where did you get that? Did you?
That is not happening statewide, so that's.
That's-
What's,
Would you show me?
Out of context, maybe? Because I think that's.
I mean, you can start from scratch, but you can still use some of the.
Wording.
They ever really didn't know how to behind it, you guys press.
Math is
so
what
many
they want,
easy
you know, there's much there.
Anything unless the research makes, I mean, I'm.
We
At
can't
least
start,
we own
the one thing about California that I didn't like what the fifth grade math said,
Research. I even seen a
use
video
large
of him
numbers,
saying,
small numbers.
it'd be great if we knew our educational stuff worked, but unfortunately, we will not know for at least another 10 years.
So we voted to take a look at these. If we could just do that for a moment, that'd be super.
Okay.
So looking just at number one here, like, as I started reading through these, I felt like they were fairly clear. And I heard your point about very large and very small numbers maybe not being clear. But other than that, as I read through, and I think it's probably a valid point, positive integers, decimals, and fractions, understand
Yeah, it gets into a little more detail once you get down to the numbers.
Yeah, and then the 1.1s, those things, estimate, round, and manipulate very large billions, and very
Yes.
small thousands numbers. You know, Jerry, to your point yesterday, as you read through these, do they seem clearer to you than the Common Core? So I would invite just sort of any general discussion on these. I lost my page somewhere.
I think they seem clearer, I thought our duties were clearer, I thought the Massachusetts standards were clearer, I was just like, what a time for next program. When you have to sit there, even as a teacher, and sit there and really think, okay, what does this mean? Okay, and they have to provide examples.
but nobody's arguing with you. Yesterday, we started looking at them and we all acknowledged that wording needed to be changed. Nobody's arguing that, right? We all agree about that.
And I don't,
That's what I
can't
thought.
go with Common Core,
Maybe we're
so.
stalled.
It's fine.
Oh, you said we should take it, okay.
All right, moving on to point two, the sticks.
Well, I think what would be helpful though, what we did yesterday, we didn't get to kindergarten on
Sure.
first grade yesterday, so take one of the grade level, like fifth grade or fourth grade, so that you can.
Yeah, I mean, fifth grade right now.
Okay, thank you, I was trying to find where you were at.
So now, it says page 53 of the document, and on my, it says page 40 on my right side. Or
Yes.
the whatever.
Well, because, yeah, the document you sent on my iPad is like 39.93, but yet it's actually
It's
zero
50,000
pages.
pages.
So what page?
So
39?
if you look at the page number on the page, it's 53 or 52. Yeah, they removed out stuff that wasn't the standards for us.
Well, I think the examples make more sense.
And can you do one thing, I'm just glancing right now. Did you say page 53?
And on the actual document.
So what do you think about the reasoning part, the last one, did you look at that?
Which one were you on?
No, for fifth grade.
The last one?
The
Fifth
last-
grade, I'm sorry.
Oh, down here for California, I think down here.
Because isn't that what we worked on, what did we work on yesterday?
Oh, the algebra, so this would be algebra functions is the one.
The mathematical, that last domain is like the mathematical practices of the Common Core, it reads very similar to that.
It does.
It runs through all the grade levels.
Okay, because I thought that last domain was pretty intense when I read it, but do you feel like it's appropriate for them?
I'm not familiar, it sounds like, it looks like it probably runs through all the grade levels, so it might,
It does.
my understanding would be that it would be how, so we're making decisions about how to approach problems from a first grade perspective. It's not dictating a particular content, it's just we're gonna have kids solving problems. That's, I don't know, but it seems like that's what it would be.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's what we're using that one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fourth grade, that's
Managers are in fifth grade.
but it says non-negative integers, so that would be confusing. Numbers powers of 10.
Actually, fifth grade does have.
It's powers of 10. Oh, I'm just looking, I couldn't understand what the positive integer powers of non-negative integers. Confusing, such a multiplication. But in our current standards, we just have a basis of 10, which is based on the base 10 system. It does say add with negative integers in fifth grade. Yeah. I don't think it's much of a teacher's going to support that.
That's not the development of the program.
That's why California is really.
You probably tell it it's big. But, in fifth grade, they just do, so there's how you will operate with negative integers.
Yeah, where was that one? That one was back under numbers and operations, right?
Where we're looking?
I have not gotten the negative numbers yet.
Well, it's not currently understanding.
I didn't think so.
It's certainly not all
It
grades.
was sixth grade. And wouldn't that, I mean, from your experience, would you think that that's more developmentally appropriate?
Yes.
Because the
Getting
teachers
down, I think that doing the, even plotting numbers when you get to the quadrants. My daughter was doing the quadrants in sixth grade with plotting
with negatives.
with negatives.
But it's pretty abstract, so that in fifth grade, we would still stay with positive.
Yes, we would still stay in positives in fifth grade. I would agree with that. I did notice that when it said that.
Well, especially since they're still learning over conversions.
Well, because right now exponential numbers is huge for fifth grade. Wrapping their head around exponents is, you know, it's tough.
But it's base 10.
It is base
base 10, the particular standard is explaining patterns of the numbers.
Yeah.
So that the exponents is off of base 10, which is our
Yes.
place value system.
Yeah, exponents is fine in fifth grade, it's just getting them to, you know,
But they're
where is
pretty
it?
abstract, you can't imagine.
Decimal move to the right or the left, but you don't want to do that. We've been singing songs. Whatever works, I don't care, as long as you get it. So.
Our plan yesterday was to meet with the secondary group at 9. Do we feel like we're ready for that? Or do we need to do that?
What are we gonna tell them?
I'm not sure.
We were saying yesterday with.
I did email them the stuff that I had in the dark drive. I think I emailed them. Should we have the right email first?
I'm gonna say that we were.
I'll make a motion that we meet with the other group in order to.
Just check resources.
Make a motion that we meet with the other group to come to a consensus on where we want to start with these standard process. What? Do we want to scrap everything? Do we want to use something here? We have to come to a consensus with this group. We cannot say, we're gonna do our thing, you're gonna do our thing, we're just gonna make sure here and when we meet. We've got to know where they're coming from, they've got to know where we're coming from.
Well, I think at this point, a good place to start with them is report, summarize the work we did yesterday afternoon.
And then check resources too. As far as where we're looking at too, so we kind of are on the same point of view.
The motion is to meet with the other group to come to a common understanding of what resource we're going to use as an overall group to start our process.
I second.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor to meet with the secondary group to discuss what path we're going to take and what resources
I
we're
think
going to
he
use.
actually said come to a consensus,
Mm.
which is different than discuss.
Come to a consensus of what resources we're going to use. Very good. All those in favor
Coming to a
of
consensus.
coming to a consensus with the second grade group?
High school.
Secondary, not
second grade. Oh, did I say second grade?
I definitely agree that we need to go talk to them. I don't know if we'll be able to come to a consensus. But I think as long as we're saying what resources we're looking at, make sure we all have the right thing, the same thing. But I would suggest that instead of sending a representative, I think we all should go, or they should all come here.
If all we're going to do is say what we're looking at, does that mean the whole group though? That's
Or
it,
if
because
we're-
otherwise we're just gonna get in a bigger argument. That's what I can see.
I think sending a couple people to just say this is what we're doing. And then report back to us on what they're doing.
We did one with the new first motion, so we can go ahead and vote on that. And then, I mean, this is still part of the discussion, but, and I know we're not following Robert's rule of order and my notes are not minutes, but in all fairness, we haven't voted on the first motion.
So those in favor of meeting with the secondary group and coming to a consensus as to what path we're going to follow and what resources we're going to use for each of the meeting. Those opposed? Okay, so
I've stayed. New York, I've stayed.
This is not going to work. I'll just say this way, we're 11 people that can't agree on anything, so there's no way, shape, or form this is ever going to work. We can meet from now to the cows come home, and this is not going to change a thing, because we can't agree to even start from a collective starting point. It's not gonna work. Listen, there's got to be some give and take.
Yeah.
in this whole group. And to this point, the give has been from me and her and him. The take has been from the rest of the table.
Yep.
There's been no give from the other end. This has to be a mutual give and take on everything. If you guys are not willing to cooperate, if you're not willing to compromise with everybody, it's not gonna work. Everything's gonna come out just exactly like you want it. We're gonna vote no. It's gonna go whatever you want to do. It's not gonna be a common ground.
Which is exactly what Desi wants, and I don't care anything about Desi. I see what's happening in the other the other states, and 3 years down the road, we're gonna be living in a nightmare. There's gonna be parents showing up at our school doors with opt-out forms, we're gonna be going through all the mess we're going through. I don't want that coming to my school district.
Please say it's going through this.
New York State, Georgia, Florida, all over. Do some research. It's everywhere. There's been schools in Missouri that have hit up with the opt-out forms.
And that's what I said.
So I make a motion that we,
It does matter, it does matter, it is tied together, but it does matter. We are here, our job is to work on these
Yes, so I'm
standards.
saying, why can't we just run something that's not common?
The House bill also says that we're supposed to we're supposed to write standards based on resources from other places, not using the Common Core standards. It does say that in the House bill.
And
So that's
we've
why we're
agreed, we
doing
will look
something.
at other places to use that, but these are the standards teachers are working from right now. So as we are revising, developing, changing, it makes sense of what they've been working on for the last, they will be at work on that for 2
The bill
years.
says we're not supposed to change Common Core standards.
so we took a few minutes to review the California standards. So I make a motion that we just quickly go around the room and say what we thought of these other standards. Just a quick, your estimation, and if you would like to pass, I would suggest you pass. So that's my motion.
Do you want me to start?
We have a second, I suppose.
Can you repeat your motion?
So my motion is just that we quickly go around the room and give you a quick assessment of what you read from the California standards.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion in second, everyone giving quick thoughts, assessments of the California standards. Raise your right hand if you would like to do that. Raise your hand if you oppose.
See how it's gonna work?
We have votes, majority vote, that we will vote on. Share our quick assessments of the California.
I think Andy,
Sure.
volunteering first.
I think, like any set of standards, there's some things that are at 5th grade that I wouldn't agree that would go there, that don't seem developmentally appropriate. There are some things that definitely make sense to me, some I might think about moving up or down. I don't think that's gonna change no matter what set of standards we look at. There's always gonna be disagreement on what grade the whole thing should be placed at. I think the wording of some of the standards is good, and that we might want to look at how they're worded when we come up with whatever we're creating.
So I guess I'll go next week, so clockwise. Yeah, I thought that there was little room for interpretation. Whereas in the Common Core, it felt like I read that there was some interpretation and I get some clarification. And I didn't feel like I needed clarification. So I felt like there's just clarity in the way that these are written. You're welcome to just pass it, I suppose.
At this point, I can't offer anything intelligent to the conversation I had. I was doing something else when you guys were reviewing it, so.
From what I'm saying, it's not the Common Core, the standards themselves, but it seems to be that even if you look beyond California, and then look at 2 or 3 of them, and the things that seem to be problems are pretty much summed up in some few statements where the content in the standard, the way it's stated, how we achieve it, how we get there, those seems to be the areas in which they're saying we're deficient, where we're not clear, we're not concise, and we leave open-ended questions.
What are you doing with the evaluation of our current standards?
Yeah, our current, and just looking at what they're, as far as this evaluation of California is done, where they come back and they say, well, they're very clear, they're very concise, they give great examples, they tell you where they want you to be at each individual area. That seems to be the biggest differences of where they scored a lot higher. So it just seemed to me that while maybe the standards need some tweaking, but it seems like more we need to work on our content and where we want the kids to be at a specific location. That's the way I do it.
Myra?
Well, I backed up to kindergarten and first grade. I kind of wanted to get a run at it. I've only just had his second grade and lost the whole thing. I think they're very comparable to what we have had with the leagues as far as expectations at those levels. I am concerned by how many times I'm seeing the word understand. The Common Core also uses the word understand quite a bit. As that's a different type of assessment to determine student understanding, because that's implying a much deeper knowledge of the mathematics. There are some things in the California that I was really glad to see come out of Common Core. Personally, I liked not having money in kindergarten and first grade because they can't remember it. Kids don't use money anymore. Parents don't use money, they use plastic. So, but I think there are pieces in there that we could definitely pull language from to help clarify what our standards are, what the Common Core standards are saying as we work toward developing Missouri standards.
So real quick, if I could just clarify on the standards, the bold headings, by the way, the like 1.0 are just the groupings, like we look to those standards, and then the standards are the ones that are.
Right.
And as I look through, understand is in here it's in there 130 times, but as I scroll through, it does seem like it's, well, maybe not always, but more often in that grouping heading, and then I think they clarify underneath, but I think your point's well taken.
Yeah, and it's very similar here, like I'm on page 35, fifth grade, understand the place value system. And then it clarifies what that means and what that looks like. But knowing that we're going towards that target of understanding, it does change the flavor of what an assessment item might look like. Does that make sense?
To go to your comment about the money,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the whole purpose of introducing the penny, the nickel, and the dime in kindergarten was so that they knew and understood what a penny and a nickel and a dime
Oh, that's not what I
was.
said.
No, hang on a second.
Okay.
I think the whole purpose of that was to introduce that, to build upon, so that they weren't hit with that all at once at the time that they had to know it. And the time that they have to know it is second grade. So by introducing that in those earlier years, it's a building block, so that they can get to that. To go along with that, the comment that you made about parents don't use money anymore, they use plastic is absolutely absurd.
Well,
To expect me as a parent to sit here and believe that my educators do not feel like my kids need to know the value of money because we use plastic is an abomination to the education process.
I didn't say they didn't need to know the value. I said kids aren't familiar with the points. They don't understand.
But you followed that by saying parents don't use money, we use plastic, which implies that we don't need to know the value of money because of some fictitious made up something, because we just slap a plastic card.
Don't imply, but children used to have coins in their hands on a regular basis. We're seeing so much less of that now, that when you lay the coins in front of them, they don't have any clue.
All the more reason to introduce
So
that and to keep that going.
But I was talking about California specifically, where they're wanting them to put piles that equal the same amount in first grade. That's implying much more than just knowing the coin, or knowing the coin and its value.
We
That's
did that
what
when I
I'm
taught
talking
first
about.
grade here, before prior to November, but I think we should.
I taught first grade.
Yeah, I think we should probably continue on
I
and
just-
have,
yeah.
table that discussion
want to make a point, Brent. We are using Common Core and our first and second grade students, or for kindergarten and first students do 5. Kenny, we're doing it even,
It's not in the common.
even though it's not, we made that decision, and it's based on place value. It's so we count by tens, we count by dimes, we count by pennies, but we're
But
not
it's a
forcing them
recognition.
to add and subtract necessarily, although intuitively they start to do it because it makes sense. That's the whole purpose of mathematics, is to make
My whole
sense.
point to that was, I'm blunt, I'm straightforward, and I'll tell you how it is. I was offended by the comment that parents don't use money anymore, they use plastic. It did imply that
Well,
we
I
don't
apologize.
even know the value of money anymore.
No, I
So-
didn't say anything
Well,
about
and I was
that.
offended that you didn't think there was give and take, because I felt like I did yesterday.
I do too.
That was, yeah.
So, continue on.
We all offer our support, so we feel that, we feel like you don't want to do anything.
I didn't
That
say-
hurt our feelings too.
I didn't say I felt like I was the only one doing anything. I felt like there was very little give and take,
We didn't say we were just gonna go and kind of score, we said we
Especially-
take other issues out there.
especially
It was not
involving
fair.
the meetings.
It was
The
not fair.
meetings we were told were we were to set our own meetings, our own agendas, our own meeting times, dates, locations, and the entire education group said, no, I can't change it, because I've already put those dates down to be off. And those dates that you put down to be off are weeks away, they're not hours away. I know how it works, my wife is a teacher. It's very easy to go back to your administrator and say, hey, guess what? I don't need a day off, I'm gonna save you the money for the substitute. That's not set in stone, there was no give there. It was all, we want it this way, this is the way we're gonna get it. We understand, we don't really care that it's hard on you parents that are having to take 2 days off of vacation. We don't really care. This is what we want, this is what we're gonna get. And you voted and made it known that way. That's where the give and take is not coming in at. And if you guys didn't know, we are being videotaped, and it is being live streamed.
I know that, I know that.
So just make,
It's not.
just make it sure.
Why is the camera there? Why
It's
do you
part of
have
the, it's part of the sunshine law and just making
Actually,
sure
it's not-
that
Actually,
everything's
it's not,
open.
it's not sunshine law, it's just because the meeting is open to the public.
Because I've been on the
Not
school
sunshine.
board for the past 3 years, and
Because
we
we're
are
not-
part
we're
of
not
the sunshine
governed by
law.
sunshine.
It's not required.
Uh-huh.
It's not required,
I was
but it's
wondering
just part
why
of
it's
the
just-
transparency of the process.
Just the transparency.
I'm not actually supposed to talk, so Audrey, do you want to address? Or anybody else?
Yeah, you can see her because it's a call.
But it's not being live streamed.
One of the criticisms of Common
I'm
Core
glad that
process
they
is
did
it's largely
it.
public.
I think it's
We've got it right.
But I just wondered who decided to put it there and why.
Yours may not be, but I know others were, because we had people that were watching it back in Jackson, Sykeston yesterday, live stream.
May have been
Just so you know.
other, it may have been other observers in the room who brought in cameras to live stream.
Or it could have been that they
It's
logged
okay, I
onto the
just
YouTube
wanted-
site and had Desi's location on it, and that's where they found the live stream video at.
So we're halfway through. We can continue on.
Are we going
All
back to
right, we're just gonna share
Yes.
your thoughts. Caroline, if you want to go ahead and share your thoughts about the Carolina, or California.
I thought they were good standards, I read them last night, and compared to the Massachusetts, they're both almost identical. They may be identical, but they're very close. I think that when you consider, our goal here is to help Missouri students compete nationally, as far as when our test scores are concerned. That's our basic goal, is we want our kids to be taught well from kindergarten through 12th grade, so that we prepare for college, but also so that they will be able to compete nationally. So we need to look at other states, where they've been successful, why are they successful? And I think California and Massachusetts both have excellent standards for us to refer to as we write our Missouri standards. I do want to say, I taught kindergarten and first grade for 27 years, and I think the money component is extremely important. I don't think we should ever give it up. I think the students, as you said, when you teach money, it lends itself to teaching place value and addition and subtraction, and the children love it. And I think if we give that up, we're giving up a very important component of math. I know the second grade teachers that I've talked to say we've lost our support, our K-1 teachers think they don't have to teach money anymore because it's not in Common Core. I'm glad to hear your district is saying you're gonna teach it, because it is very important and it supports the, and it's an easy thing to do, you know, and it supports the
But we do
teachers. that
teach
teach
it tied to a standard. So it's just how we go about teaching that standard, using that manipulative. It's basically a manipulative.
And here's an opportunity for us to make that point in the standards too. I think we should address it myself. I really do.
Jared?
Well, I'm not well versed enough to know exactly the specific standards. I mean, that, to me, that's the experts. But what is there is much clearer and understandable by me as an outside person looking at a standard. I know exactly what Massachusetts and California were much better written as far as the wording. I can understand it better. Now, what they were, I'm not, you know, should it be taught in 3rd grade or 4th grade? I don't know. I mean, that's something I'm not probably well versed at. But as an outsider looking in with respect to, do I understand what we're trying to teach, or what we're trying to get across, those are really good. And that's the Missouri Learning Standards, they're not real clear. And so if we can take Peter, Paul, and Mary and put them all together and make a good standard that Missouri's got, I think we need to take all of them and look at them and take the best of each one of them and put together and make them, I mean, to me, less words is way better than more words. That's not exactly the education way a lot of times, based on my 10 years of experience being on the board. That's not the way we function, but I think in these cases, I think clarity is better for you guys, knowing exactly, so you have the flexibility to do the how. How do we make this happen? And make sure the whats are very clear and what the standards are. So I like the wording. So I think I'd like to see us take Missouri Learning Standards like we did yesterday. The comments that we had that this needs to be revised and take California and Massachusetts, what goes here, can we make them better? And how do we work it? And go from there. So I think there's real value to those other states' standards as we move forward.
I agree, the readability of this is much easier to handle than the Common Core. I think it's broken down into smaller parts, so we're used to breaking it down for the kids, putting in kid-friendly I-can statements for students so they know what their objectives are for the learning targets. Sometimes when you read these, it's, you know, if it says identify, describe, and classify polygons, I don't have to put that in a kid-friendly target because it's already, the readability is already there for the child. I do think that as we look at the California or the Massachusetts, I found that going to the 4th grade and the 5th grade, they were already throwing out those negative numbers in 4th grade as an introduction and expanding it into 5th grade. I think, you know, like we said, that didn't even hit the Common Core until 6th grade. I mean, we would still have to adjust where we put things. I don't think everything's placed exactly where it might need to be in California or Massachusetts, but as we look at, you know, our Missouri standards that were already in place even prior, what we put in place with Common Core, and we lay it out, and we keep the readability there, and we've got all the resources we can use, then I think that we have the things in, you know, to create something that could be a really good workable document for our students to be successful in the state of Missouri.
I'm sorry I missed lunch, but I'm trying to keep tabs on my daughter that's March Jewish right now, so if I step out from time to time, I apologize for that, but she's promised to let me know what's going on. I mean, she's a grown woman, she's married, but, you know, I'm still concerned about things that are going on, so.
So we were sharing about our impression of California, if you wanted to do it, so we skipped over where you were.
That you were doing
We
what?
were just sharing our impression of California standards.
Well, I mean, I don't have a problem with the way they're written. I like some of the examples, but again, you know, my stance is I really don't want anything to do with Common Core, no matter what state it's from.
This is pre-Common Core.
If it's not Common Core, not developed by any of those private trade organizations, then I'm a problem.
My thoughts are echoed by a lot of things I've heard. I think the readability is clear. I like what you said, the interpretation is minimal. I would be interested, and I literally just glanced at these, probably not even the whole 10, 15 minutes we had. I'd like to see how they do connect to the Missouri learning standards at this point in comparison to see what there's things in here that we don't have in our standards for grade level, make some of those connections, but I do like the simplified.
With the simplified wording, I just looked at 5th grade, I didn't go into any of the grade levels, but I did notice that there were quite a few identified, which we talked about yesterday was a lower level, and then they do use know. So we had that discussion about know from memory or fluent, so in that case, some of those wordings, but in general, looking at the content, it's already been mentioned, there are some standards that would not be appropriate for 5th grade, in my professional opinion, that are listed in 5th grade in this document.
Which ones specifically?
The non-negative exponents and operating with integers. 5th graders doing negative numbers just doesn't, figuring out where they are on the number line, yes, they can understand it less and more, but really getting into operating with them would be more appropriate.
I do that with enrichment, I will still expose my kids to it, because I think that you get some of your learners in there, that they need that, and they get it. The other ones just kind of sit there going, I don't know what she just did.
It's like a mystery.
But you gotta still show them that, so that your smarter kids just aren't blurred out of your mind.
And I think it's even got negative decimals and rational numbers in here, which is, in 5th grade, that would be really a stretch to as teachers.
So based on the conversation, and I think Lori kind of touched on it, and Jerry as well, it sounds to me like for some people in the group, we're not really satisfied with walking through and tinkering with Common Core. And so maybe a good compromise might be to take Common Core, to take this set of standards or others that we want to bring in, and kind of do the crosswalk as Lori's talking about, figuring out where things line up and working through it that way.
Okay, but I tried to say something early on and I never got to say it, and I'd like to say it right here if I can. On the licensure part, this licensure that we bought as a state allows us to copy the standards and share them in our district. That's what the licensure provides for us. Teachers want to copy standards and send them home so parents are informed, or the district wants to use those standards in professional development. They're allowed to copy them and share and work with them. This licensure does not provide for you to go in and change the standards. The standards are copyrighted. If we go in and take this book and change those standards, we are violating their copyright law. If we do that, we will be sued. I just want to go on the record, all of the recording everything, Caroline Carrigo has said that, I don't want to be sued when you guys go in and change the Common Core standards.
Let me review what's on the future. The Common Core State Standards came out in 2010, and it is a copyright document. As states adopted them, it says right on the Common Core website about future use, and that we would have, I read it yesterday, I gotta find it again, that we would have the right to change for the future. It was state-led, it said state,
The NGO.
Does it spell out the process by which they can change?
it does not. Here, I'm getting into the frequently, it's on Common Core State Standards, about the standards. I'm scrolling down to frequently asked questions.
For a copyrighted document to be changed, you must first go to the owners of that copyright and ask for changes to be made, and they're the only ones that can make those changes.
So it says implementation and future work, and then the question is, who will manage Common Core State Standards standards in the future. The Common Core state standards are and will remain a state-led effort, and adoption of the standards and any potential revision will continue to be a voluntary state decision.
Because they're copyrighted, if you change them without their permission, you are violating the copyright laws. And, yeah, it's there, and we just need to be really, I'm just saying, we need to be careful about that. You go in and change them, guys.
Jared, did you get your attorney that you spoke with, so we can?
No,
Do you know of any
no.
other
If
states?
there's gonna be any legal advice to this group, it needs to come from the legislators themselves.
Yeah.
It has to come from them. We cannot accept, well, my attorney said this, and my attorney said this, and my attorney said this.
I don't think it's open to legislators either.
It's open to too much interpretation.
I don't think that, I don't think they think the legislators either, they're not part of this group. He said, Bob said that yesterday, they're not any influence on this group either. So it's us,
Do anything right now, then
unless you
it
ask
needs to
somebody.
stay the way it is. So we will remain with this document the way it is if we do not do anything else.
We're reporting to the legislators every month.
Yeah, but he just told us yesterday, they have no influence on what we're doing. If nobody else gets attorneys, I don't think they have any more right to it than we do.
I do think they're gonna see to it that we're following this law.
Oh,
What are
we
we
should
doing
follow
that's
the law.
not following the law, but Caroline? We're changing copyrighted standards. Do you know any other state that's changed those standards? Is there any other state that has
Let's say India,
changed those
I
standards?
don't see us changing Common Core. I see us changing what we're doing, just we adopted this. So that's my understanding of our work.
Marilyn, but the thing is those Common Core standards that we bought licensure for, they are copyrighted. And even though we have licensure to copy them and to share them, we do not have permission to change them. We don't. When you sign on with Common Core, you do what Common Core tells you to do. You may think it's a state-led initiative, but I've got to tell you,
It says it right here in your hand on the web.
we've got to go in and find out from somebody if we can change those.
Apparently, we can't do that unless we talk to the legislators, and they're not gonna know.
Right, who's gonna know? That's, I don't know, maybe, I don't think our group here can go out and hire an attorney that's independent. Somehow are we? I wish we could get over this mistrust part here that we've got between our two sides and start working together on this for the good for children. I don't know how we're gonna.
Which it really felt like we were doing yesterday when we were taking what's in place that our teachers have in place and we were tweaking it to fit Missouri. It felt like that's what we were doing yesterday, Caroline. It felt good when we finished that yesterday.
I think what she's getting at is, if we're going to change, then we can't change this. We have to pick a different,
And you know,
different document to start from.
when
That's
I
not
read this bill again, when I go back and read this where it says, in establishing, evaluating, modifying, and revising, which is where you all are coming from, because you're saying it's okay for us to revise. It says, and revising the academic performance standards and learning standards authorized by section 160.54. Right there, that 160.54, we need to look into that and see. I don't think Common Core is in 160.514. So when it's talking about evaluating, modifying, and revising, I don't think it's talking about revising Common Core there. And that's where we could go back to the legislature and ask them. I'm on page 7.
There is another resource if you all wanted to go to curriculum focus points for pre-kindergarten through grade 8 mathematics by the NCTM, National Council of Teachers in Mathematics. That is out there, it's not, that's.
Taking it off on this again, sounds like we were looking at California.
Because we got back to talking about.
Giving us a resource to go to that isn't.
That's what everybody likes council to do.
Now,
I was out for a while, so, no.
Well,
We don't hold points.
where James was taking us is looking at our Missouri learning standards and looking at how we can simplify and make it that using California maybe as a resource. And then we got off on you can't change Common Core.
Whose office are you from? Sorry. Senator Emery's. Is there any way you all can give us an attorney to ensure this? Because we're stuck on this argument of can we change the Common Core standards or not? We want to know if they are protected by
The
copyright.
question is, can we change the Missouri learning standards?
That's what we're trying to change our Common Core standards.
Right,
But it's not
Missouri learning
I'm
standards.
not here to work on what we already have.
I'm here to start Missouri learning standards. What's the difference between that and Common Core standards?
Missouri's ours, these are ours.
The only difference
We're
between the
not
two.
trying to change Common Core for the nation, we're trying to change Missouri learning standards for us.
But right now, we started as the National Common Core
The
standards.
content is exactly the same, the content, but we adopted as Missouri Learning Standards, which changes the whole, it's different, it's not Common Core, it's Missouri Learning Standard. Granted, it's cut and paste, there's no question about it.
And if you go to Common Core website, it says you cannot do that. You cannot put your name on their standards.
We're not putting it on the national standards, we're putting it on the standards.
These are national
They are the standards, where is
It's
the
our
standard?
national standards, we revise them for our state.
Why do you think that?
Because they're Missouri learning standards, and that's what we are asked to do.
If I,
It's copyrighted.
let me use another
We're
analogy.
not going to change a published book, but we might use the published book to cite for our other, I mean, I don't see the difference.
Let me use
I can't take a textbook and
If I
copy it and
come to
save
your
my
house-
district money and distribute them to my students and then say, okay, we're not gonna learn this about history, I want you to pencil this in here. That's owned by a textbook company. If I change anything in there and distribute it without paying them for it, I'm liable.
Unless they gave you.
If I come to your house and I take the license plate off of my car, put it on your car, and drive off with it, does that make your car my car? Because that's all they've done. They took the license plate off the Common Core and they put Missouri Learning Standards in place. That's all they did. They are the exact same
They're
thing.
exactly the same. You can't
They
change
just
that.
I
changed the
understand
name.
they are the exact same thing. I understand that we are using that for the 2 years.
Right.
But as a work group, we have been asked to revise our standards.
No. We have been tasked to develop and recommend, not revise.
Evaluate, modify.
No.
Develop, it's
But the
right.
last, no, you're reading from the state school board
That
directives.
doesn't mean revise Common Core.
What?
It means revise the, it might mean
Read
revise
it.
the beliefs, I don't know, it does not mean.
And will you please, because you have it there, will you please read the entire
It's
excerpt?
probably, I mean, it doesn't sound like we're going to come
And so, can we look at a new resource for focal points? It puts us in a whole new place, it's by the NCTM, and it brings in K.
No, I really don't think we can. I think we have to come to some agreement here, whether we can revise, whether we have been tasked to revise, or whether we have been tasked to develop. There's a definite difference.
So let me ask you a
I
question.
understand.
Is it okay
If we're
for
gonna
you?
develop, you need to get all
Well, on the question of develop, revise, all that, I mean, the statute says you are to develop, but now at the same time, this is not a legal opinion, this is, I can tell you legislative intent here. You were tasked to develop. Now, there's this debate, well, can you use any Common Core standards? Well, I don't know if you can really copyright the concepts. I mean, the standards are copyrighted as a whole. And so I don't think you can just take them and plot them down and say, hey, we developed Missouri standards. Now, I mean, there probably are certain things in the Common Core standards that might be good to have in the state. I'm not, that's not my job to tell you, it's ultimately up to you, but I don't think there's anything preventing you from looking at them and say, you know, this standard right here is okay to use. I mean, it's not gonna prevent you from using that standard. But you are tasked with developing standards. That's, you know, the last section of the bill says develop standards by. So in terms of that, I would say you are tasked to develop, but I don't think you are prevented from looking at anything.
Okay, so what I'm asking though, can we go in and take the Common Core standards that we have in this book, which we're calling them the Missouri standards, but they are exactly the Common Core standards, they've not been changed, they're copyrighted. Missouri has licensure for the copyrighted standards to copy them and to share them, but can we go in and change these standards?
Well, you're ultimately developing, so if you're changing it, I would say you're probably developing new standards.
And
I mean, that's not a legal opinion, that's
so
my
we should
personal
take
opinion.
these standards and change them and then put our name on it and say these are Missouri's standards.
Well, they're no longer together as a whole, which I believe, my understanding is, the standards were copyrighted as a whole. I mean, what you find in Common Core, you can probably find in standards that existed before Common Core.
Well, like in
So-
California, a lot of this may be worded the same or similar to what's in
Something that's in
Common
our
Core.
Missouri
Students
case, too.
represent simple functional relationships. That, these concepts.
Right, and I mean, once again, this is not a legal opinion, my personal opinion, I don't think you can copyright a concept. Now,
Right,
the concepts taken together as a whole is copyrighted by.
So now that we have the question that we have to decide, has Common Core been adopted as a whole, or do Missouris pick and choose? If they pick and choose, then they're ours. If they adopted them as a whole, then they are theirs.
But as we change them, they become, he's saying you can pull them out if there's some
but-
use.
But because we adopted it, if we adopted them as a whole, we cannot change them and then put our name on it. It's a copyright infringement. You changed my document without my permission. Even though you adopted it, even though you're using it, all we're doing is using it. That's all it is.
Use it as a reference.
So if it's been adopted as a whole, the copyright applies. If it's been adopted in bits and pieces, then it's ours, and I will concede that fact.
But as far as just going in and revising the document, I think it's a little.
I'd rather go with California and just revise those. How do we know those are? Because they're not.
They surely are.
It would be, you would see it on the website.
Well, it's
It
not in
will
this
say
book
it.
either.
It will
When you
say
go
it
to
on
the Common Core website, it's very clear.
let me tell you why it's not on the book.
The same
Okay.
thing here.
Let me tell you why it's not on the book, and I'll read this is straight from the Common Core website. Attribution copyright notice. The National Governors Association Center Council of Chief State School Officers shall be acknowledged as the sole owners and developers of the Common Core state standards, and no claims to the contrary shall be made. Any publication or public display shall include the following notice. Copyright 2010.
I was wondering why that's not.
Okay, now just hang on a second. National Governors Association Center for Best Practices and Council of Chief State School Officers, all rights reserved. That must be included on there. States and territories of the United States, as well as the District of Columbia, that have adopted the Common Core state standards in whole are exempt from this provision of the license. So if it is not on there as a copyright, that says that our state adopted them in whole. They are not ours. They are still copyrighted. We can display them. We can use them. We can send bits and pieces of them home, but we cannot change them.
I really think you're right on that, and, it's not that I don't want to change it, make it better.
The only change we can make is to develop new standards.
So are you saying we can't even look at them?
No, you can look
We
at
can
it.
use- we can look at it.
That's a reference.
We,
That's what we were doing.
we can look at this, no, we can look at them, but we cannot change them. We cannot take what we currently have.
It's gonna sound very similar anyways. Let's
It-
just get started.
We cannot take what we currently have and say, I don't like, and this is where we were changing
It's
it.
gonna sound very similar anyway.
It doesn't matter, it doesn't
That's
matter.
fine, let's get started.
We cannot
We
change,
get started.
we cannot change a word in a standard. We cannot.
Change a word?
We cannot change a word, we're changing the standard.
No, you're not. If you change a word or simplify, you're not changing the outcome. The standard is, what our expectations that we have of students within the public school system are the same. That's what the standard is. We're gonna tweak it to make it more understandable. That's not changing the standard. It's not changing the.
If I recall correctly, one of the standards we looked at yesterday had the word fluency and know from memory, and we wanted to take some of those words out. That changes that standard. It changes how that standard is interpreted. It changes how that standard is. You cannot change these standards and simply say, okay, now they're ours. We have to develop new standards. if we want to use some of these standards, then we can use the basis of what is there and write our own words, but we cannot use what is there and take out a word.
Isn't that what we were doing yesterday?
That is what we were doing yesterday, and that is what we cannot do. Because we don't own them. We can't make these changes to them.
But we're making them our own, so we're using resources. If we use California's, if we use Common Core, if we use Missouri Learning Standard, if we use some NCTM, and put them all together, but use those as guides, we're developing our own.
That's correct, but we can't change the words in the Common Core standards. If we
They
want
won't, we won't be changing them.
If
We're
we-
developing our own using those resources.
if we want to use a Common Core standard that everybody likes, we have to copy it and paste it. We can't change the words.
I understand where you all are coming from, because I felt the same way as you did about 3 years ago. And as I've researched it and I've gone to all the complete picture of what Common Core, when you sign up to it, what it's gonna do. And there's all these ties and these things that you go to when you tie yourself into the federal government and education that you have to answer to. It's kind of like a child left behind. There were all these stories and we did that. It was horrible. And now we're not making that better, we're making it worse when we step into this.
Why can't we just start with a non-Common Core document, very, very highly rated and go from there? Why can't we just start with a
I'm not saying
non-Common?
that.
I'm not saying the standards are bad. I know what we did yesterday. We went through the standards. I loved going through standards and reading them. I've done them online. I do. And that part doesn't bother me a bit. The standards don't bother me. It's just the federal tie to, hey, this document is copyrighted. It was written, sorry ladies, but it was not written by our state. It was written by some people that developed it years ago, like in 2009 is when they wrote it actually. But maybe
They wrote it after
2008.
the governor signed on to it.
But here you go, it's copyrighted, and if you're gonna follow it, you're not gonna be able to change it.
This is what the
That's
license,
why the House.
this is what the license grant allows us to do from Common Core website. The National Governors Association Center for Best Practices and the Council of Chief State School Officers hereby grant a limited, non-exclusive, royalty-free license to copy, publish, distribute, and display the Common Core state standards for purposes that support the Common Core state standards initiative. These uses may involve the Common Core state standards as a whole or selected excerpts or portions. It does not say anywhere in that license agreement that you can take the standard and change the words.
Well, now let's figure out what we're gonna start with.
There again. There again.
Yeah, the curriculum focal points is a good place to look to for resources because it gives us another place to start as to where fifth grade is and where backwards. That's a resource we can use and share with them.
There again, I will make the motion again that we meet with the other group and come to some sort of common ground on where we're going to start from. If we can't take what we have and change it by law, then we have to come up with a new starting point. It's not from scratch, it's not saying we're gonna write this in our own word. We have to find something that we're gonna use to reference from.
I don't think we can leave what we have, can we?
We can walk away and leave the
You can walk away and we'll go
right now.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's fine. I'm staying on
I
the.
think we should recognize Fred here.
There's a motion on the floor.
Oh, there's a motion.
For Fred? Yes, the motion was to get together with the other working group and come to some common ground as to where we're gonna start to develop these standards.
We have a motion on, do you have a second?
We can't even agree in this room. What good is it gonna do to go,
It's
just
not the point.
be a bigger
That's not
topic?
the point, Ann,
But it's discussion time and that's my discussion.
but that's not the point.
I think it might be good to get input from them to see if they're going through the same thing we are. Are you from next door?
I am.
We have a
I can
motion,
tell you where we are.
Hang on just a second, I understand. So we do have a motion on our floor.
we have a motion and a second to meet with the other group,
So
To come to
usually that's
common
the
ground.
discussion.
As to where to start. So if you would like to do that, raise your right hand. If you would like, if you'd like to wait, raise your hand. Okay, the majority goes with you.
So Fred, would you ask your group if we could meet with?
Yes, I just wanted to see if you would like to meet. I can tell you where we actually just managed to get a motion passed as well. And what we are doing is we are taking, the 4 documents, which we mentioned to you yesterday. Those are our starting points.
What are they?
They are the Missouri College Initiative one, and which essentially says where do they want initial students to be when they enter college. So we took that as our, and then with that we have the ACT standards. Then we have the Massachusetts 2000 by grade standards, and then we have the Common Core standards. And so what we were going to do is we're starting first with what we want our end product to look like. In other words, how we're going to be modifying those documents to see what standards we have for the person graduating. Then we want to go back to starting 6th grade with the other 2 documents and see how do they compare, what do we want there. So what does our entry student look like, what does our exit student look like? That's why we wanted to talk to you, is to say that, okay, here, we have an idea about what we want as our starting student, that's where your end product is. And so that's from those 2 points, then we will say, okay, over the years, here's what we want them to cover in the courses. So that's the general approach we're going to take, and that's as far as we've got so far.
So I emailed, I thought, hope I emailed the right person, but
I didn't see an email.
I accidentally ripped the thing that you gave me, Jay Roth. I emailed
Okay, but
the California standards, because we're looking at those as well.
oh, you're going to, okay, well, you mentioned that as well, but, okay. Okay, so those were that's what we had. I just stopped by to see if you're stop by to see, and also to talk about when you're meeting next. Are you sticking with the meeting on October 2nd and 3rd, or are you going to wait until October?
I think second.
October 2nd.
We voted yesterday.
We voted yesterday to meet October 2nd.
So you're going to be here then?
Yes.
Are you guys?
We have not taken that vote yet. I'm lobbying heavily against that because too many days missed in a very short period of time without advance notices. It's not good. So we'd rather wait. We'll do the second one and then continue on from there, because we don't see this as a 6-meeting type of commitment. And to do it so soon before we've actually reviewed all those other documents, I think we're sort of setting up our way in which we're going to approach things. So you'll not be joining us?
What's that?
Will be.
No, yeah, we voted to join.
Oh, you did?
Yes. So do you want to come here? Do you want us to come there? Yes.
We're just finishing up a break. Why don't you come on down?
Just real quick, I just wanted to everyone to know that I emailed you. I quickly looked at the strands in Common Core in California and just emailed all those to you. I tried to line them up where I thought they would align, but wasn't exactly sure where to place them. So that should be in your box.
Did anybody here look at the Massachusetts? I looked at those last night. I know you did, Jay, right?
I did.
Okay. I mean, I'm comfortable with either one of those.
I'm not comfortable with Massachusetts.
What was it you didn't like it?
Because when I went onto their website as a state and was looking, it states Massachusetts adopted CCSS due to
No, no,
increased,
I'm talking about the old one.
I do,
Oh, okay, the 2000.
due to increased rigor and stronger expectations for student performance. That's why they left the Massachusetts standards
No,
from
they did
2000.
it with the initiative.
So
For the money.
it was on this state education.
They needed the waiver libraries.
Yeah, that's what's out there.
So we going over there?
I'm going to that.
Well, I'm going to, I'm not going to.
That would be perfect.
That's fine over there, yeah, that's. I tried to flip the curriculum, just like drop and drag it into folders. I thought I saw it in here when I was forwarded on to you.
I don't see it, so I attempted to do it, but it was like it was coming, because it is a fairly big document. Yeah, I know it's not very first.
So we just go over to tell me where we're at.
He just explained, so I'm not sure.
Sitting here, so computers can be protected, some you trust me. Reason.
No, that's not possible.
I'm gonna stay in here. Sorry. I'm gonna stay in here.
Okay.
So, you know, few extra bottles of water here. They're not cold, but
Oh, that's
I'll
okay.
pack.
Thank you. I have some in my car over like 5 blocks
Oh,
away.
yeah.
Thanks.
We
Take a 5-minute break,
Take
10,
10 minute break, yeah. An hour?
We'll start with the domains that you sent and we'll come up with our domains.
Yeah.
And then that's where we're
I'll
starting.
make a motion.
Taking a 10-minute
Yeah, take a break. We're back at
Link document.
10:45. Yeah, we're back at 10:45.
It's a shame we didn't have all the outlets on the other wall.
The information that they were passing around, we have it here. One is license, copyright, which we already talked about this morning. We talked about the sunshine law, that's here. And also a document. I'm not sure if we requested this one, it's for higher ed, but it's here.
Even if the shoes don't be there.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, thank you.
I would run over that thing.
Oh my gosh, I don't know, right, I was sitting down, I was like, what, I was thinking about it.
It felt good for about 2 minutes.
I feel like I know you from somewhere else. Like, where are you from? I teach in Warrensburg. I live in Clinton. I've never Clinton, no. I just have one of those faces that look like everybody in the same meetings. Probably.
How do you get involved in this process? Hunter, so how did you get involved in this process?
I'm not sure exactly what started the conversation. Senator Romine goes to my mother-in-law's church. I think he used to be chair of the board, or the state board on education.
For the committee or whatever?
And he mentioned something about it, and anyway, so I had asked him some other questions, related to education, and I think that's what it is.
almost worse, I think.
It is. It really is. I know, but I still worry about you. Well, I'm just wondering if she's going to the doctor. She went to the one in our small town, K. And I really wasn't wild about the diagnosis they gave her, how they were treating her condition. But now that her and her husband live in St. Louis, he got a position in the county firm up there, and graduated this spring, they ended up there. And she's got to see somebody in March too, so I don't know about that. I had a real good experience with my mom. She was in a motorcycle accident last spring, and one of our doctors down there just automatically wanted to take the whole ball and socket and bone out, put her an implant in. I'm like, no, you know. So I took her for a second opinion at the Barnes. My cousin, the doctor, recommended this lady, Dr. Gallus. And I mean, not only she knows the stage, she's known worldwide. She's even cleared surgery. I'm gonna tell you what, she's like, anytime you keep that attack, the patient always does much better. And she
5 minutes. I don't know if you
so
know.
it's just a second opinion. Yeah.
I think we all of us should have had a huge old meeting with this 1490 bill, and it should have been read to all of us word for word and interpreted, and then go from there. Because, that's why we're here, and we have to follow it. This is legally, we have to follow it.
It would have helped a lot if the leaders would have got everybody together and said, this is what we want you to do.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you can and can't do.
Exactly. Because, I mean, it's not, isn't, do you understand that legally, the Common Core has happened, it's not even legal really for them to be, for the Common Core initiative to be telling states that they have to do this curriculum, these standards. And that's why Missouri is finally, students are not gonna do it, but I don't know if everybody even understands that. So,
Think about that.
Yeah.
Capital building is pretty much open right now. I mean, until the first of the year, I think it's pretty much open. A lot of deliveries and stuff, so
All
I
right.
think we get in touch with some of those leaders' offices and try to schedule it. But,
Who to contact?
I can get some names. I can try to work on that one.
I don't know if you guys saw, but our group made an Associate Press story yesterday. We were in the K-5 Star, Education Week in Southeast Missouri.
What did it say? How can you do
Just
that?
point to a contingency process. So the guy that was injured needed to be.
Oh, Jeremy asked me to let him know. He make it ready. Okay. But he wasn't. Okay. Okay, so she just copied. Yeah, what she didn't copy fast. She was one. Jeremy. Okay, so.
But Jeremy introduced him to link. She's already, she's doing it.
Same thing, I'll probably get the exact same. I'll do it for everything with the chicken.
What did you get down there?
I got a grilled chicken sandwich that had to wait. It was good, it was scratched, but you have to wait to actually make it, so.
Okay, where am I supposed to go for this? I went to the wrong place yesterday.
Where'd you go?
Next corner, Jefferson Building.
Jeffersonville.
Where did you go, Jane?
I went to the Capitol. I went to
Did
They didn't honor it?
Oh.
I tried to listen to them, and then when I saw no one else there, I thought, oh, I'm in the wrong place.
This is on the military, you just follow the crowd at chow time.
I ended up meeting before I know what everyone was anyway, so it was fine, but, yeah, I almost had him convinced, but it was more my honesty that gave it away. All right, I added Massachusetts, domains or strains, whatever you want to call it, to this thing that I just sent you all. I'm going to send that now as well.
Jerry said you were working on it, right?
That's pretty good.
I think if I'm correct, I've spoken to the Attorney General's office several times on the sunshine issues. I think if I'm correct, you can go into executive session and speak about anything you want, but if it's public record access, you just have to keep the minutes on that and have the public accessible to that. So we're not actually as strictly bound to having to be here.
What would be the
or-
purpose of us having city executive?
What that does is if the group has something that comes up and you can't all get together at the same time, at the same place, and you want to do a conference call or a Skype, it allows you the ability to do that on an emergency basis.
So just our inability to find a common time is not an emergency basis.
I guess, yeah, what constitutes an emergency basis. But still, even at that, you only have to give 24 hours of notice on that. So, you put it out there 24 hours ahead of time, we're having an executive session. And then at that point, you just keep the records on that and then make that accessible to the public. And feel free to fact check me on that too. I don't want to misquote anything there.
I was just reading that Massachusetts has, just in the number of 66% of their school districts, Massachusetts have chosen the Massachusetts test option over PARC. The PARC was piloted in 2014, but had a drop of 44% of the teachers. All states have dropped out from PARC, just over the past year.
Yeah, James, this is awesome, what you just said.
So
That's what I was envisioning that we needed to.
it's not, I don't want time now. I would make a motion, the first thing we do is try to go through and set what our domains or strains or whatever these things are called. As our first step, so that's my,
I second that. Did you say that was a motion?
yes, motion.
And I second. We have a motion second to start looking or deciding as a group what we want for elementary K-5 math domains to be. If that's where you want to go, and you agree with that, raise your hand.
I'm sorry, what?
looking at the domains, deciding what we want our domains to be. Did you get the email from James?
Yeah. So when I get this table from you, James, do I just click on it, or how do I?
Well, I just copied and pasted it into Word. I mean, I made it in Word and copied and pasted it into the email, so.
Okay. I'm gonna try to preview it here. Yeah, when I preview, I just get this over and over. This-
But I'll see if I can pull it up here. And maybe we can project. No wonder you guys were looking at the projector earlier, you couldn't see it. So maybe we can adjust and try to get where we can see it. But there's considerable overlap between them in terms of just the domains.
So let's go ahead and vote on that again. We have a motion and a second to make decisions as to what domains we would like our elementary map.
Excuse me.
To become. So if you're in favor of that, raise your hand.
No,
Okay,
no.
we have unanimous.
Should we issue a press release on that?
Listen, you made the motion, what's
Hey, I'll do another one. I'm usually break for lunch at 11:40.
I'm sorry.
I second it.
Right. All in favor, raise your hand. We have unanimous.
Another unanimous. Jerry's not here, we all know how Jerry would vote.
When we're trying to get them up front, what I will do is I will save what I sent as a Word document, put that in our drive as well. So we have access to the drive in place.
And I've tried more than once to load the curriculum focal points into that drive. It's a PDF, and like right now it's at 65%. It keeps failing right when we're on it, so I'm sure we'll keep trying it. Okay.
I have that in the Dropbox. Do you think I could email that to James and he could email or reply?
Maybe it's a big document, I don't know. We can try it.
So I'm not sure, I just saved it as strands, right? I don't know, I didn't know what to save it as, but
Is Dropbox just an app?
it's kind of like an app. It's, as they said, it's like an online filing cabinet. So you can get access to everyone, shared filing cabinet.
Let's make Jerry vote too, so it can really be unanimous.
What are they?
We took 2 votes when we were out, and we were unanimous. Without your.
Okay, I voted yes. I want to vote no, just for being a pain in the butt. I just want to be a pain in the butt now. Oh, it's about lunch. Yes.
I was gonna say, I heard yesterday that one of the groups even voted whether or not to go to the bathroom, to take a bathroom break. That's how, so is that where we're going with this?
No, we can.
I think we are all right for time. We need to have.
Don't have a corn, you can't go to the bathroom.
So I think I'm going to get it pulled up here, just one moment.
Separated, I think so too.
Imagine the geometry.
Yeah.
Why is it not letting me?
I just never sure about getting that data together.
For some reason, this computer doesn't like to allow me to open
Stats,
Drive.
statistics, data, probability, all that. So
It's
it's
on.
Oh, measuring. Reasoning is important, and we talked about that yesterday, that it really can't.
I think the reasoning just goes back to problem solving.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be separate, I would want it more, fun. I was seeing if their focal point, the focal points, they just have number, nutrition, algebra, measurement, geometry. That's what their focus.
Number sense, it's like you said.
sorry, it's gonna, I think I'm gonna have to save it as a Word document and email it to me, because it won't allow me to open, it won't allow me to open Drive on that computer, so give me 1 second, I apologize. All right, I'm just putting it in a Word document and sending it to all of us again through email. Yeah, when I click on Drive, it pulls up that. I emailed it now, so I should be. Well, I'm going to use this. I've emailed it now. I'm just not going to use Drive.
This is the strands document that you're trying to get.
Yeah, it's what I just, did it come through in the email?
Yeah, and what you have is what I got.
Well, I just sent an email with it in a Word document. Did that come through? Did I hit send?
I'm not tethered to record here.
We didn't get paper copies of the Massachusetts learning standards. Are you guys okay with that?
Yes, okay.
Myers, do you want to ask about the paper copies of the focal points?
I have them, or I have them in book form in my office.
And is it big?
Okay, here we go.
But we
We've
could,
got
because it's
it.
K-8, but we could just ask for K-5, because that's, that we really need to bring those. I just put it in the Dropbox, and I think it's successfully shared.
Okay, now I got it. So what I did is I just went through and looked at the domains of the strains and wrote them down, and I tried to align them as but I maybe didn't do it perfectly. So if you think we should try to align them more before we start talking about it, that's fine. But basically, Common Core has 6, California and Massachusetts have 5, and there seems to be significant overlap or alignment between the strands of domains. So where we go from here, I think, is creating our own. Yeah, how do I change the alignment or the orientation of the paper? Page layout. Orientation. How do I add column?
If you right click in that home area of Massachusetts and right click,
Okay,
and then
thanks,
insert,
there we go. I'm not used to using a,
and then there you go.
so we're going to, no.
Insert. It should say insert, just insert.
Okay, so now we got a column for us. So where do we want to start? I mean, as I look at counting and cardinality, it seems like it's the one thing that's out from all the others that's sort of separate. And it's only in kindergarten, and it seems to me that fits probably within the domains of other states. So I would say we're looking to touch counting and cardinality.
Because that's going to fit in with number sense.
That's what I would think.
I'm just gonna sit here next to this.
Hey, James,
Mm-hmm.
should you make that bigger?
I can maybe zoom in here or bold it. That's what I can do.
Oh, we don't have it full. Yeah, well, that's why you can't do it. That's why.
Right now,
That's an extension cord for that.
I guess left click, insert. Oh, you're in the drive.
There we go, is that better?
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, so
In the drive, you communicate with the network, so it's going to be slower.
it seems one broad category is operations to algebraic thinking, or as California calls it, algebra and functions. And I thought the related one, Massachusetts, describes patterns, relations, and algebra. Does that seem like those are fairly aligned? So what, do we have a suggestion on what we might call that? Or do we want to do something different there?
I like the idea of leading with operations because as I was talking to Leslie, reading on my copy, the one thing is that the algebraic thinking comes from the work with the operations. So if we could have something about operations and relationships, because yesterday we talked a lot about that the relationships within those standards would be important. So.
Is there a difference between an operation and a function? Do we need to know, do we need to have both in here or not?
I think we need to have algebra in there. Don't you think you need an algebra?
Thinking, but not necessarily the function, I mean, function notation, all that is above. So I think the algebraic thinking or algebraic reasoning or algebraic relations patterns is much more explicit to K-5.
Does the word functions need to be there?
I don't think it does, personally. That's just my opinion.
So we have operations, relationships, or relationship, does that matter?
It's not a loaded question.
Massachusetts said relations, but you said relationships, and I just want to clarify, make sure that I have it right. So what we have now is operations, relationships, and algebraic thinking. Any disagreement on that?
Is it too wordy?
It's pretty wordy.
I mean, it's no more, well, I guess it's one more word than Massachusetts, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4. One more word than on 4. We have long words, I guess. So tell us, what do you think is the importance between having operations and relationships?
Jerry had
I mean, you can always cut it back later.
We can get our ideas down a little bit.
It's easy to plan, but not back in.
So, okay, so the next one we have number and operations in base 10, number sense and operations. Now, if we have operations in the previous one, we need to hear as well.
It's a different one. This, to me, the difference on this is that that's where you really be doing the operations. Up top, it's more how they're related to each other.
That's where the relationship, it's the order of operation for the first one, the one that you understand doing your,
So number sense keeps saying.
Does there need to be anything else besides number sense here?
I think the base 10 is important in the fact that that is our system, our precise system, and if we're not very explicit, then it could get misinterpreted.
Yeah, so take out operations, but
yeah, put number sense and base 10.
I mean, you understand the difference of operations in that first one and the second, and I don't, to me, that would be confusing to have operations in both of them, I think.
That's why I think.
And I think what you're saying is really good.
I'm just wondering
But I
about
don't understand the difference.
just the balance between those two. That top one is going to be enormous because we would have to do all the algebraic thinking and all the operation stuff. And then what we're getting to then on this number sense in base 10 is something really much smaller. Maybe that doesn't matter. But as far as
You're the experts on that. I'm just trying to look at these operations.
So explain to us, if you could, what operations are. Could you do that, Ian?
you talking to me?
Yeah, you're a math teacher, you're the expert.
Operations are addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all the normal things that we would think about for operations. And then relationships between those, relationships between addition and subtraction involves properties, different strategies for doing the operations. That's all, to me, is all entwined in there in operations.
Is that two separate things? The first part you said is addition, subtraction, multiplication, all that stuff, and then we went to relationship of those operations.
Well, it doesn't have to be. My comment just is that all that's involved, that's going to make that first strand enormous.
So you look at
It's all
something,
related.
But it's the second part you just said is, I I was just trying to, I understand what you're saying, I was just trying to think, is that where you could make a delineation between those two areas that would be in a different domain?
I think you could, I don't think you have to,
Okay.
I don't, and maybe it doesn't matter that we have one standard, that one domain has a lot under, maybe that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally arguing out of ignorance here, I'm not arguing at all, I just want to make sure.
So, if we look at this, what the other standards have done, in Common Core, they put operations in the operations in algebraic thinking, and then they have number and operations in base 10.
And number of operations fractions.
Oh, yeah, so they have operations
That's
on the
operation.
And if we look at, say, Massachusetts,
Doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, doing all of those things. The thing with the base 10 is because for some reason place value is so difficult for a child to grasp, and leaving that almost by itself, number sense in base 10, because that, for whatever reason, I don't remember it being so difficult for me to teach, and it doesn't matter what standard I follow, it does not matter. It is difficult to teach. Kids have a hard time grasping place value. And knowing that it is just by base 10, however it goes up or down the place value system, it is a very difficult thing to grasp. Once you get to operations and relationship and algebra, I think that's taking what they learned in the place value system and then doing operations with it. And even though there's all kinds of operations over there, that's just because now I'm doing it with the order of operations and knowing the multiplication comes before addition and doing all those other things, and then I gotta put it in place with fractions and decimals and all those other things. That's just using my operations with everything else that falls into place in math. Numbers in base 10 has to come first, because if they don't get place value, they do not know how to line up any of that and put it in place. So that is why that one seems like there's not much there, but it is so like over their heads.
well, so if we could just clarify real quick, and I apologize, if you were to, for other people, if we could say what number sense is, you're kind of like doing just operations a moment ago.
It's just being able to do math and getting it, that they know that 45 is right between 40 and 50, and they get that it's closer to 50 than 40 because it's halfway there, because it's 5 o'clock into the shot or below, let it go. Sorry.
It's crazy, but
That's how they say, no, but if they know that if I say, well, where's 43 going to fall in that number line? Number sense is knowing that I have closer to $40 and I have $50. Number sense just, it's at base 10. It's between, they're counting by tens and knowing where they're going to fall in that, they don't have to do exact math, they can do it like mental math, but yet they can estimate, they can do it by rounding and figuring that out. Number sense, knowing the numbers.
Sorry, Mary.
That's okay, when she was talking about the algebra operations versus the number operations, I was also thinking like yesterday when we were looking at some of the standards, throwing in the variable too soon. And I would think using variables or boxes or unknown symbols would fall under operations, relationships, and algebraic thinking, where number sense and operations would be more of a concrete number and reasoning about, is it big, is it small, how much big, how much less.
And with this, the way it's written here, number sense and base 10, is that still something you would see through all grade levels?
Yes.
K-5.
So then are we finding the way that just number sense and base 10?
Yes.
I personally would like to add operate, kind of what Massachusetts has.
Number sense and
And where
operations.
the top operations is more looking for patterns, and then this one, the number sense and operations, if you put base 10.5, but that's where you would locate the operation things based on.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Is operations policy.
She's saying that she thinks it's needed in both ways because it's different when you're.
I would be okay with it coming out of the top, because we could still talk about it as a relationship, but I feel like it needs to be in the second one. That's what I'm arguing for.
Okay, now here we have measurement across all three. One couples it with geometry, one couples it with data, and then two of the Common Core Massachusetts have geometry on its own. So what you're saying? So I guess my question is, should measurement be coupled with something? Should geometry be coupled with something, or should they be independent?
I personally think geometry needs to be independent. It's huge.
Yeah, I have kids that can't do anything with the number of operations and all that, you know, maybe have an IP, but maybe you put them into geometry or something.
They get in that spatial.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So what about measurement then? So do we like measurement with data, measure it by itself? So Massachusetts, you see down towards the bottom, has data analysis, statistics, and measurement. So data kind of coupled with measurement there, but then they have a separate measurement.
When you say measurement, what is that? Measurement data?
Linear, the area and all that too as well.
Perimeter.
Are you looking at
Well, you're
relationships
doing
on
area,
lines or graphs
area,
or
perimeter, volume.
volume? Okay. All right,
And it
that's
could be
what
liquid, it could be solid.
That's what measurement means.
Yeah, it's all that, measuring length.
Metric and customary.
Yes.
As long as you're
And you have to do fractions before you can measure.
The data, what is that?
Right. Statistics, so reading graphs and figuring averages, medians.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make.
So really, there's measurement in statistics and there's measurement in geometry. Because, I mean, the whole purpose of geometry is so that you can quantify what it is in space, so.
But that goes back to if you have measurement geometry and data,
And
in
measurement
one,
in data.
that's huge.
I think, yeah,
That's,
that's.
to me, that's huge, that it needs to be broken down into at least two things. I don't know if you need three, but at least two, don't you?
Do you think measurement and data could stay together?
I don't have a problem with that in geometry separately, but I don't know, the experts.
I mean,
Like you said, it's a number of standards you have in each
It's
one
gonna
of them,
come to what we put under.
what you put underneath them.
so there's
Well, it's
suggestions.
just working domains.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can be changed.
We change it,
Once
I
you
agree.
know what we're putting in.
So since we said geometry was so gigantic, perhaps we should just do geometry. And then have another one, we have to decide measurement if it quantifies its own, or if we just go ahead and do statistics as a separate domain. I know that our measurements can be in both of those.
Do you want to call it statistics or is that?
Well, a lot of times it's data analysis.
Yeah.
Well, I like measurement in data. So then, what's the,
They will.
what's the fifth one then? I mean, not to say that we actually have to have 5 or 6 or whatever, but if we,
We've data analysis and.
Well, one thing that the Common Core does that I kind of like is pulling fractions out because it's so huge in elementary and by making it its own. But I don't know that we would want to do that, but that might be another one that would only be, maybe not be in all the grade levels, but it really calls attention to how big fractions are in elementary school.
and that's something that I've heard teachers talk about as a strong suit, that they thought there was much more emphasis on fractions.
And it's much needed.
And fractions tie closely with measurement. Closely with measurement.
So, I don't recall, on California, there is one called mathematical reasoning. I wonder what they had under that.
It's kind of similar to the math practices.
The math practices that are in the Common Core,
Problem
so
solving.
problem solving. The 7 areas, I should have looked about, that right there that I have.
But my recommendation, instead of separating that out, would be to include that within our other domains. Like you wouldn't have a separate problem solving. You're gonna have problem solve with each of the content areas.
So the math reasoning would go in with each domain.
You have to reason about numbers, you have to reason about the geometry, the geometric relationship, you have to reason about the data. That's the whole point of data analysis, is to reason about it. So I don't think we should separate that necessarily.
So, do we have a suggestion for this fourth one? Is it to keep something on fractions?
Yeah, I think keep it.
And California and Massachusetts specifically say statistics. We don't have that common core. We want want statistics in somewhere else, but to do different thoughts.
I think if we say data analysis, we're covering it.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
agree with that, okay. So then here, so we stick with number and operations dash fractions and go to call it something else.
This is number of operations.
They do have it separate, I mean, it's grades 3 through 5, so it's a little more
Yeah.
grade specific.
Yeah,
rather
because you're looking at, comparing and ordering fractions, you're looking at adding and subtracting.
It's
like
like that,
denominators, adding and subtracting denominators, you're.
I don't know about you guys, but when I teach that, we sometimes get bogged down in that because it is more difficult.
Yes, I have it. I mean, you need all kinds of things on materials, you know, how to do this. It's its own, it's a beast.
Yeah.
Fractions are a beast.
Can we just put what it says now? Just leave that number in operations fractions and come back to if we want to change the wording?
Sure.
To see how it
Yeah,
plays
and
out.
I've heard the top list is working as of today, so we can revise these, of course. So, looking at these one more time, so we've got 5. Are we calling these domains? So
Well,
is that what they are?
yes. We call them domains. We can do domains slash strands. That strands, we're trying to minimize wording versus maximize it. They're interchangeable. Domains
Okay.
and strands are interchangeable.
Okay, so we're all clear, domains and strands. So, does anyone have suggestions or changes to these, or are we all pretty much good with these?
They may change as we start adding everything.
Right.
With, on the very top, on 4 box versus county and card analysis, where does that come in with the ones we?
Number sense and operations and basement.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no need to add it.
No, but you know, it might be nice to note that so we don't
Maybe
lose
in
track of the
parentheses,
county.
Yeah, how do we do it?
Let's go.
I guess you can specify when you write the standard.
Right.
Well, we write a standard for it.
Sandra, you're suggesting that I noted something?
I'm not sure, yeah, just put it in parentheses so we don't lose track of the county stuff being somewhere. Not that it becomes part of the name, it's just.
Maybe we can help the fractions too.
Are we all basically agreed on these?
I guess we'll see what we get into, putting things in there, you know.
Right.
It's the way we want.
So we still, what do we say, we're going to 45?
45, yeah.
Start with relationships in algebraic thinking, 5th grade, and see if we can do it.
Right, so I would suggest we take a moment to open up all the documents that you want to look at. So if you're pulling from Massachusetts or California or Mountain or wherever you personally want to look, pull those documents up now. And we'll start with relationships and algebra. Start kind of plugging in.
We start in 5th grade. We're back.
Is that fine? Yeah?
That's fine.
Or do we want to do it and plug in what we like, or do we want to pull them all together?
I think we need to be careful about saying plugging what we like. I'm
Well-
worried that we're gonna lose progression that way.
Sure.
So I think we should look at them all together. Does that make, I don't think we should take one document and pull out what we like from it, rather we should look at all of them as a commonalities.
So kind of what we did here with like a crosswalk where we put them all in again?
That, I'm worried that if we just start pulling things from here and there, we're not looking at everything together, we'll just end up with a hodgepodge. And does that make sense?
Yeah. So let me.
Goal is to get what we cover. It's not just something that it's pretty easy to drop a big graph.
It's all the- I don't know that I'll be able to copy and paste it, but that actual standards or not. So I don't have them all pulled up on this computer, I said, give me access to the drive. But I could,
So what did your agency do in actually indicate the forms to be sized? Just the size.
I put it in Dropbox, I don't know, did we send that to Jeremy Ellis to see if he could make copies of
I'll
the
play with
curriculum?
this at lunch and see if I can.
Just the Massachusetts standards is all I told him.
Okay.
Was there something else?
The curriculum incomplete document.
Okay.
Although, as I'm looking at it, I mean, it has, like a standard we talked about yesterday, develop waste strategies to estimate the results of whole number quantification, judge the reasonableness of such results. But it's got to mark third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade. So it's one standard, all three grade.
Right, right.
Teachers, that's what they were like, just telling what.
Exactly. Right.
do you think?
Yeah, that's what came up, that's what they want.
So I worry about, because they're very global and everything that I'm looking at in the curriculum focal points is all, it's a grade span, it's not really grade level, even though this
So we
designated
didn't just rewrite it.
and it does have identify such properties as commutative, social, distributed, and used in the computer, so it has identified them.
As we go through this part, since we're looking at multiple documents, do you think it's best to keep it this way, or should we break up and say, one person try to take common core stuff and put it in our bracket, one group take California, and we could try to pair up and have a math curriculum specialist with someone who's a parent or whatever. What do you think is the best way of moving forward with that as we try to place the existing standards under our frameworks?
I think it'd be nice to work through one together so that we can kind of see what process works best. And then once we have that process down, then we break up.
So which do we want to start with?
I think we're just,
I think so.
Getting familiar with
I'm having to look through every sheet. Just some of our reference points too can easily be what we've had in the past. It doesn't just have to.
Are we gonna refer to the NCTM also?
Yes, I put it in the Dropbox and I shared, or Dropbox on the Google and shared it, and that's what I was pulling up is the, but what I discovered is that it has individual standards similar to like California, Massachusetts, but what it's doing is it's tagging them for third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade.
So the new device.
So we would need to decide really where we want it to be.
Okay.
Or how to differentiate the third grade versus fourth grade versus fifth grade.
We could start with California, you have that as a Word document, so you don't need to copy and paste that one.
Yeah.
that's the one I'm asking. Guys, I just like, we have tons of stuff here for teachers to do.
All right, so did I email it or did I just posted the Word? All right, so I'm gonna just email it to everyone again. California is a Word document. All right, the California Standards Word document is coming to you, to the eartubes. It's already posted on our drive, but then you got it in your inbox as well.
Other state standards. There's California.
From ours, we're looking at relationships and algebraic thinking. Is that where we want to start with that one? And then we need to get to 5th grade on the California standards. And you could be looking at the Word document or you could look at the other document I gave you with the California standards. It doesn't matter. But I've got the Word document here so I can copy and paste. Okay, there it is. So remember, where we lined up relationships and algebraic thinking, in California, the standard that most aligns to what we were thinking is probably algebra functions, although you might pull possibly from somewhere else. So I would suggest maybe paying special attention to algebra functions at the 5th grade level.
There's some stuff in that California that is above 5th grade.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the stuff in there is?
Well, when you get into the algebra and functions, some of it's fine, like, as I even looked back at our 2008, where we, it says identify functions as linear and nonlinear from tables or graphs, that's what it's talking about in there too. I know this was from 2007 with California, but you get down to where they're, algebra functions in California. They can use a letter to represent an unknown number, write and evaluate simple algebraic expressions in one variable by substitution. And a distributed property, I'm just not getting to that, but they can do that, and they can identify and graph ordered pairs. Now, they cannot do it with negative numbers. They're not going to be doing it in 4 quadrants of a coordinate plane. That's going to happen in 6th grade.
So the keywords are simple expressions.
Yeah, the keywords are simple expressions, and we will not be using 4 quadrants in 5th grade.
What are they expecting in the lyrics?
I don't know. See, well, I don't know. And see, Common Core didn't expect anybody to do it till 6th grade either. Because my daughter didn't do 4 quadrants until 6th grade. And that was even in the Missouri, in the Glees, even before we went to Common Core. It was
Because we're not dealing with negative numbers.
yes, right. We're not dealing with negative numbers in 5th grade.
So like even as you get down to solving problems involving linear functions with individual values, write the equation and graph the resulting ordered pairs, they can do that, but as you look at the X and Y thing on the 1.5 on California, they've got the -9, -5. They're, we have to change that, but as I look at what we've done in the past, we're doing those things, we're not doing this with negative.
So I think what we're doing here though, is not debating what we want to, but we're gonna try to take what they have and put it under our framework, which is
Yes.
C, right? So we would be fine then if I took all of this 1.0 through 1.5 and put it under this category for us? Is that right?
Yeah.
So what I'm gonna control X, wait, what the? Oh, I renumbered. No, I didn't. Okay. Let me make sure I get the top part of it. So, take all of this. Cut that out of there. I'm gonna paste it under our strands. So I put from California, and now we have back from California. Is that right? And we'll just build it this way. We'll do California's, then we'll have sort of all of them that we can look at. Is that how we want to do it?
Let's throw somewhere.
Yeah, I'm willing to take any suggestion.
Yeah, it works for me.
Would we want to look at just the bolded parts first to see, agree on the big ideas?
Yeah, I was wondering, when we were doing the meeting, we were talking about property or
Yeah.
operation, like,
Is this
order
fit
operation,
students'
simple expressions, simplified equation, like, I wonder if we should,
Like
like,
that,
the one
you know,
at
at the very top, that bold print,
Yeah.
looking at that first, making sure that
That's the
fits with
standard,
where.
isn't it?
Yeah, that is the main standard, and then the clusters underneath that.
Yeah, I don't mind the idea. I felt like with California's especially, that there's so much more clarity that comes through with the subpoints. So I need to refresh myself in Common Core. Did Common Core align through the same sort of thing and have the golden point?
Yes.
So now we'll just do that, and then start with that.
Okay.
What's that been called?
Standard.
The substrate or the?
Cluster.
So this is the cluster.
Yes.
Okay,
The 1.1, 1.2.
Those are the clusters that go under the standard.
All right, so I'm gonna take this. Right here. Control Z. And I'll just highlight it. Yes, that's what I'll do. So that we can know what we've already pulled. Okay. So then, is that all they had? Does it move better in geometry, or do they have that under algebra and functions?
we're in California.
Yeah, look at California's.
That's also right. It just grays out, like it's not.
Well, I.
Yeah, so all they have,
Slow.
all they have in fifth grade under algebra and functions at 1 point.
Is that, well, with those 5 parts to it. so-
Right. But do we want to glance through the other standards now and see if there's more that we think should fit in that area? So looking at California, let's just go to the beginning of fifth grade in California. Why don't we just go through and just place each of these into the right place? Makes sense?
So what can you compare?
Let me get our, I'm sorry, I'm flipping
So
back.
start at the beginning of the 5th grade.
Yeah, just go through each of them, rather than trying to,
I spent all day and all year on this. That's amazing.
They don't have much.
They don't have much in their standards.
Common Core only has 2
For fifth grade.
for 5th grade.
no.
So what is the 2 that they can't, I think it's division.
No, I meant the whole, that's great.
Where algebra, what page were you on in the California? I had a local point to Massachusetts, I didn't.
On the Word document, page 22, and it's 52 on the PDF.
The chapters. You gotta get to all that stuff. Okay.
So you can go ahead, and, as I'm just cleaning this up so we can get it in a workable fashion, but if you want to go ahead and start looking through and noting to yourself where things should go, that would be good. And then I'll get this ready to
James, do
start.
you have this in the Google Drive that it's
Well, I can't access the drive from here,
okay.
so what I'm gonna do is, once I'm finished here, I'm gonna email it and then put it in the drive.
I just know on the drive, you could each be working
Yeah.
different parts of it. too.
If I could get on it from this computer, I would. Okay, so starting at the beginning of California's 5th grade, their first one under number system, students compute with very large and very small numbers. That's standard. Where do we place that under our domains that we created?
Like the number sense, based on operations and
Infractions.
Copy of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was
They
noticing.
included
We actually
fractions.
had 2 or 3 sentences in the description that we want to separate.
Okay.
Did you also put it in fractions?
So put it under fractions as well. No, I can't.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Okay, do it. No, that one's fine. And second one, students perform calculations and solve problems involving addition, subtraction, simple multiplication, division, fractions. In decimals. Sorry, where does that go? So,
Same two.
under both of those.
Yeah.
Sorry, so number of cents, is that correct?
Yes. Do you want it there, or do you want it down in the number? Shouldn't you go down in numbers and operations dash fractions?
I put it on both.
It's gonna go, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Got that one.
And then when you get to the little sub
We did
parts,
that.
then that's how they can split.
We did the algebra functions already. All right, so this one for measurement and geometry. Students understand and compute volumes and areas of simple objects.
Measurement.
Is it measurement or geometry?
Let's
Since we have measurement and data analysis, how are we splitting that up?
Oh, yeah, we did the measurement separate, didn't we? Then it has to be geometry.
I
I
think
think
that's
that's
geometry,
geometry.
data, geometry.
All in agreement there?
For today.
For today.
Well, I think a good thing to do is, once we do this, this is something we can then take and talk to other groups, the group and talk and say, does this seem to make sense to you? We're outlining this here.
Yes, because honestly, this is where me as a parent is at a disadvantage in this, because this is your
You know.
area of expertise. And all I'm hoping to do is take this back and say, this is what we've come up with.
All right, so next one is, students identify, describe, and classify the properties of and the relationships between plane and solid geometric figures. Geometry?
Yeah, that's the same geometry.
All right. Now, under the California standards, this is moved into statistics, data analysis, and probability. So the first one is students display, analyze, compare, and interpret different data sets, including data sets of different sizes. That's, I think, clearly the measurement and data analysis, is that right? Then it goes under mathematical reasoning. So this is a category that we didn't create specifically. So students make decisions about how to approach problems.
That goes in everything.
So should I create an overarching one, or should we not even put it in?
Read it again.
Students make decisions about how to approach problems. But then if you look at the subpoints here, analyze problems by identifying relationships, distinguishing relevant from irrelevant information, sequencing and prioritizing information, and observing patterns. That, I think, touches on multiple standards.
Right.
Standards.
It seems pretty standard to have a standalone
It's kind of,
strand that runs through everything.
it seems to be really important here, because if you look at California, I think, I could be wrong here, but I think third, fourth, and fifth have, it's almost exactly the same right there, and then if you go over to Massachusetts, exactly the same as this.
Yes,
It's
because
something really
it's mathematical
important.
practices, it almost has to fit in under every little string.
So what if I put
You
something
would
that
take
said,
the bonus entity, it's woven into.
It's woven into each strand, because
Yeah.
you've got to learn how to handle problem solving.
So why do you think they address it separately? In all
To make sure that teachers don't forget to do that.
What- so I put overarching principles, and I'm just gonna put it there.
Okay.
Does that seem okay to everyone? Then again, we're coming back and revise and edit these things later, so.
That's simple reason.
Students use strategy, skills, and concepts in finding solutions. That seems overarching as well, is that right?
James, you've been the new
Yeah. Well, all of these documents have some sort of preamble where it talks about what's overarching principles, and maybe we weave some of that into our overarching, what's that paragraph at the beginning. Students move beyond a particular problem by generalizing to other situations. Where does this go?
Advice.
Everywhere.
Good. So this is sort of overarching.
Yeah.
All right, so then that's all five. And we're
Seems like a
lunchtime.
good stopping point at this.
Save.
Are we back on track a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with the way we're rolling.
I do.
I do too.
We have to be, if you're gonna use lunch ticket, you have to be over at the Jefferson, cafe before you, so we need to take a break.
Someone will be here. One of us, yes. Someone's being. Just crowded.